morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. This is the public hearing and public meeting of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 250195, 250196, 250197, 250198, 250199, 250200, 250201, 250202, 250210, 250211, 250212, and resolution number 250214. Good morning, everyone. We will be starting shortly. The Honorable Mr. Boyle, just want to start off by saying good morning to you, sir. Good to see you over there. leadership team. Didn't you ask to run? Ms. Lawhead, will you please take the roll to take attendance?
Councilmember Squilla. Councilmember Gautier. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Young. Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Lozada. Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Phillips. Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Harity. Councilmember Ahmad. Councilmember Landau. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember O'Rourke. Council President Johnson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lawhead. A quorum of this committee is present, and this hearing is now officially called to order. Ms. Lawhead, will you please read the title of the resolutions?
Bill number 250195, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250196, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2026. Bill number 250197, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2026 capital budget. Bill number 250198, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2026 through 2031 inclusive. Bill number 250199, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes to revise certain tax rates and end certain exclusions from the tax on receipts, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250200, an ordinance amending Chapter 12-1000 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Traffic Code to revise the fee for the use of parking meters, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250201, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled School Tax Authorization to provide for an increase in the tax that the Board of Education of the School District of Philadelphia is authorized to impose on real estate tax, and amending Chapter 19-1300 entitled Real Estate Taxes to establish an equivalent reduction in the tax rate for the city real estate tax, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250202, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1806 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Authorization of Realty Use and Occupancy Tax to eliminate certain exemptions, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250210, an ordinance amending Section 10-1001 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fees of the Commissioner of Records to increase the portion of fees for the recording of deeds and mortgages and related documents to be used for housing trust fund purposes under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250211, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Realty Transfer Tax by revising the rate of the tax, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250212, an ordinance to amend Chapter 19-4400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Development Impact Tax and the imposition of the tax under certain terms and conditions. Resolution number 250214, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2026 through 2030, and incorporating revisions with respect to fiscal year 2025, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to an intergovernmental cooperation agreement by and between the city and the authority.
Today, we will continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal year 2026, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2031. We have scheduled testimony from the Managing Director's office this afternoon. We have scheduled testimony from the Philadelphia Department of Prisons. Ms. Lawhead, will you please call the first witness to testify from the administration?
Adam Teal, Managing Director.
Good morning.
Good morning, Council President, Council members.
Good morning, Adam. Just state your name for the record, and when you feel ready, begin your testimony.
Thank you, Council President. I'm Adam Teal, the Managing Director for the City of Philadelphia. And good morning, President Johnson and members of City Council. Joining me today are members of our Managing Director's Office Executive Team. You can see them here. We have Tara Moore, our first Deputy Managing Director, Aparna Palantino, who's our Deputy Managing Director for the Capital Program Office, Dominic Morellis, who's our newly appointed Deputy Managing Director for Community Safety, Aubrey Powers, our Deputy Managing Director for Community Services, Dave Wilson, Deputy Managing Director for General Services, Crystal Yates-Gale, our Deputy Managing Director for Health and Human Services, Mike Carroll, our Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation and Infrastructure Systems, and Stephen St. Vincent, Deputy Managing Director for Strategic Initiatives, along with Brian Clinton, our Chief of Staff, and all of our agency heads are here or will be here, as well as other relevant subject matter experts. I'm pleased to provide testimony on the Managing Director's Office's fiscal year 2026 operating budget. The Managing Director's Office, or MDO, works in coordination with individual operating departments to implement the Mayor's vision to make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, and greenest big city in the nation, with access to economic opportunity for all, and to deliver efficient, effective, and responsive public services to every neighborhood in Philadelphia that residents can see, touch, and feel. To that end, Council President, this just in, I'm pleased to announce that Mayor Parker will be making an announcement later today regarding the continuation of the SEPTA Key Advantage program for city employees. About 13,000 city employees are presently enrolled in the Key Advantage program, enabling them to commute to and from work free of charge. Additionally, Mayor Parker will be announcing the city is in discussions with SEPTA to extend the SEPTA Zero Fare pilot through fiscal year 2026. So you'll be seeing that announcement soon. Mayor Parker didn't want to sit on that good news, Council President. So with that, I'll be happy to answer your questions and council members' questions for FY26.
Y'all coming correct today, set the tone. So we always got to get credit where credit is due, so I want to acknowledge our mayor, who's a former member of this body. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Minority Whip, Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke, who rose this issue to the next level through a sense of advocacy. And so I just want to acknowledge you for your hard work and speaking truth to power, and also our mayor for her compassionate approach and addressing this as relates to our fiscal budget. And so thank you for that good news to get started. I want to jump right into Adam. Your budget request includes a substantial amount of funding for both highway and commercial beautification efforts. And so just give me an idea of how you're going to determine what roadways and commercial corridors will receive the funding, and also how you coordinating with the Office of Clean and Green, Streets Department, as well as I know for the cleaning and greening and beautification of highways, there's been roughly $800,000 put in the budget of mural arts that has to be used for the beautification of highways. And so those are three separate agencies that are already receiving funding for the beautification of highways. And I think in our hearing yesterday, there was some talk also about work along commercial corridors. And so it seems there's an overlap, so just give me some clarity.
Council President, I'll start by saying, as you know, one of the hallmarks of this administration and one of Mayor Parker's mantras is intergovernmental and interagency coordination and collaboration. I think we've demonstrated that over the past year with many of the so-called impossible projects that we've accomplished. And as we get ready for 2026, all of our roadways and highways need attention. This is something we know you hear all the time, we hear it all the time, and it is a really challenging space to do that level of coordination. Nobody does it better than our Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation Infrastructure Systems than Mike Carroll, so I'm going to ask Mike to come up and address some of the specifics of how we're getting that done, Council President.
Good morning. Mike Carroll, Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation and Infrastructure Systems here at the city. So as the Managing Director said, we're leveraging all the partnerships we can in order to get this work done. There's pieces of this work that CLIP has been engaged in commercial corridors. I'm sorry, on the highway network, working with PennDOT, and we're extending that work. So we're trying to reach an agreement with PennDOT to do a series of events over the next fiscal year to make sure we're prepared for all the events in 2026. And I expect that agreement can be reached later this spring. The work on commercial corridors is an extension of work that the Office of Clean and Green has already been involved in, working with Commerce Department. So that's really a continuation of work that we've been doing, and hopefully a little bit of an expansion of that that's also coordinated around the events in 2026. And I think that gets to the mayor's goal. As she said many times, we have company coming, so we want to make sure the city looks as presentable as possible and everybody has a great experience there. The mural arts work is being rebooted based on information that PennDOT has shared with us. They are creating a policy which is a little bit different than the way that we've done mural arts on the expressway system in the past, but we're confident that we can continue to resource that work. You may know that there had been some vandalism on some of the signature murals that were placed along our expressway network, and so we're going to be cleaning that up and refreshing those murals. And in addition to that, it's my understanding that some of the murals around the city on the local streets and some of the arterial streets are also going to get a facelift, and there'll be an expansion of some of that work in order to make sure that we have some diversion possibilities for folks who had been tagging maybe neighborhoods, you know, kind of the way that we did in the past. And so this is something the mayor's also expressed interest in rebooting and resourcing at a higher level now to make sure that they can get on the right path and hopefully find a career track working with us through the Mural Arts program. In general, as the manager director said, the emphasis has been on getting out of our silos, having conversations among departments, among units, and extending that beyond the city administration to work as closely as we can with our colleagues at PennDOT District 6 and others in the community.
And just a brief follow-up before I ask my next question. But the funding that's being asked for the beautification of the highways and commercial corridors, and then there's also funding that's going into the Office of Clean and Green to do the same thing. And there's also funding going into mural arts to do the same thing. You see where I'm going with this? So one, let's say, is $1 million going toward mural arts, right? And for the beautification of highways and commercial corridors through MDO, there's significant funding being asked. Then in Clean and Green, there's also funding being asked. So the coordination is cool. I'm just talking about the money asked for 3 different departments.
Council President, totally understand that, and I think just, you know, being real about it, I think your concern, is there duplication? Are these somehow going to be, is this going to be efficient? And I can assure you, those efforts are complementary, so they're going to be joined up and synced up. It's not like we're going to have somebody coming in and doing work and then painting over it or, you know, re-cleaning it unless it needs to be re-cleaned. So I think the idea with the presentation of the budget is to put the dollars closest to the work. So putting the dollars into the actual agency or entity that's going to be executing that work, even or perhaps especially when it's part of a broader coordinated strategic effort, as everything is. And this team meets every day to make sure that everything is synced up just in our portfolio. We meet obviously regularly with Mayor Parker and her team and all of our different, while we have our direct portfolio, we work and enable across all of city government to make sure there's no duplication of effort and make sure we're efficient. And I think you all really saw that with the effort at Riverview, having everybody all hands on deck, meeting regularly, even in some cases from other government entities and from private sector partners.
And then I have one more question, and before we get into the Wellness Center, I'm sure members have questions regarding it, but I do want to give compliments in terms of it being an idea, and you came new on the job, bless you. Last year, during the budget process, very long budget process, about the $100 million being borrowed, and at the time it was just a concept, building it as we were moving forward. But thus far, though, definitely a step in the right direction, definitely an actualization of the actual concept in terms of the actual wellness center. So do want to commend you from having the idea and the concept, and to be quite frank, it was short on answers and responses the last time, and we were saying, well, what are you going to do with this whole $100 million? But members have the opportunity to see the progress that has been made from proof of concept to actually the realization of the actual wellness center at Riverview. So I just want to acknowledge that, give credit where credit is due.
And Council President, really appreciate that and appreciate your support. Understand, as I said last year, we were really asking you to believe in us. And hopefully we delivered on that. We appreciate the trust. The essential thing, I use that as an example, that way of working is what's different. Making sure that we are working across silos, that we are connecting these efforts, again, not just within city government, intergovernmental, interagency, not-for-profit, private sector. So it's that way of working, everybody working towards a common goal and executing against that goal. You know, they said we couldn't build it while we flew it, but we did. And that is that way of working because we know 2026 is coming. So we're using that same way of working for internal processes, external processes, and I think that is the assurance that will make sure those efforts you're talking about are joined up, executed efficiently and effectively.
Thank you. Michael Carroll, first and foremost, I've been working with you several years, so I just want to thank you for your hard work as the leader of Otis. So that's the first and foremost. I tell you it publicly, I tell you privately, I respect your expertise in this space. Your testimony cites that Otis will issue a new Vision Zero action plan, including programming safety on every mile of the high injury network and fostering a citywide safety culture through key programs like automated speed enforcement, which is in partnership with our good friend Richie Laser and the Philadelphia Parking Authority, and Safe Routes Philly in partnership with the school district. Can you give us an idea of the actual action plan? And also, as we continue to make sure that we're a more pedestrian-friendly city, how we're addressing those efforts as well.
Yes, so in the action plan will lay out a lot more details, so we want everybody to stay tuned as we're rolling that out. But the main focus will be to continue the work that we're doing in neighborhoods and schools in order to right-size the right-of-way, implementing some narrowing up of lanes and some facilities that enhance crosswalks. We have work to do to protect bike lanes where we have bike lanes in place, and so we're doing a series of capital projects in order to, throughout the city, create some level of protection, whether it be planters in some neighborhoods, which is a high level of protection, whether it's to continue to implement the park and protected bike lanes on facilities where we've identified those projects. Also, in some cases, we're doing more limited improvements to, as you have discussed several times, daylight intersections, and in order to daylight intersections, we want to make sure that we're coordinating with PPA and we're actually implementing physical obstructions in those intersections near the corners, near the crosswalks, so that people don't just kind of cheat because they think the enforcement might be lax, but of course enforcement is also part of it. We're coordinating this effort with the new implementation of speed cameras and red light cameras, which is continuing throughout the city, and that's providing us an opportunity to directly reduce speeds in a lot of neighborhoods. And we're also continuing with the planning work we're doing, engaging with communities, which involves working with schools, working with neighbors, working with you as council in order to identify other things that we can do to modify people's behavior, identify future projects as well.
Okay. Can you and your team consider, I know we discussed this when I met with you and your team in Philadelphia on Bicycle Coalition and the Bike Action Group up in room 576 regarding education campaign, awareness campaign. We have to just slow down in the city. People be on AirPods in their ears, on their phones, while they're driving. Same thing when they're walking, same thing even when they're biking. And when you're not paying attention, this opens it up for more opportunity for somebody to get hurt. So there's something for us to just think about as a city, just to get people in the mind state of specifically just slowing down and being more aware of their surroundings. And I just think from an education standpoint, if it's out there, people will be more intentional about their surroundings and they're slowing down when they're going to and from home or to and from their place of business. And so that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to my members. I want to ask members, because I know we started a little late, to be more direct in your questioning so we can get 2 rounds in the day, and also those who are on the panel to also be more specific in your responses so we can get a second round in as well. Because I know members will be texting me saying, I would like to get a question, and so I want to make sure I'm managing this time to keep this process moving forward and being fair so everybody can get some feedback in before we move forward. Their questionings as we move forward. First person, I'm going to call on Councilmember Curtis Jones.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and welcome back. I will be as succinct as possible. In light of what's happening with tariffs, in light of what's happening with supply chains, have we done a plan B to make sure that we have a predictable cost within our infrastructure, within our running of our government, so that we are not caught flat-footed with spike prices increases, and have we made that plan? And I want to get this in by way of capital projects. It is the word in these chambers that it's a 10-year process backlog in some cases. I have 2 charts here. One is the optimal chart of 24 days to get something done. The other is 44 days. If either one of them were close to true, it would be a wonderful day. It's more like a 10-year process in some cases. And as we start to look at infrastructure repairs, how do we cut this down? My good friend, Mr. Carroll, has a bridge that connects the art museum to the parkway that, I'm worried about. I'm worried about the 59th Street Bridge that we at some point have to close, and we're talking about 2026, but I don't know, will that take 10 years and disrupting traffic patterns in our city? So with that, succinctly, Plan B on price spikes and tariffs and our exposure from the federal government, and what are we doing to cut down the capital project time?
Councilmember, Council President, we are constantly tracking the market for the cost of materials as well as supply chains. It's incredibly dynamic. We have seen, as everybody has seen, sometimes on a daily basis, tariffs can go from X% to 2X% and back again. It's really challenging, and I'm not sure the market has necessarily priced all of that in right now because there are inventories that are already on the shelf. We're fortunate Aparna and her team, Joe Brasky, do a great job sourcing materials and supplies, which is why we were able to do Riverview so fast. That is going to continue to be a challenge. It's something that we are literally assessing every day. As far as your second question, the timing, this goes back to the answer I provided the Council President before. We are using this model and changing the way we're working for everything. So trying to get all of our partners, our enablers, our key enablers, all of our agencies around the table, working together from jump to make sure that we can execute projects faster still with quality, and without short-circuiting any of the things that we need to do in terms of procurement regulations, supply chains, equity, making sure that we have the people we need working on those jobs. So we are absolutely working on that daily and tweaking our processes to be more efficient, faster, and effective. And it is the uncertainty, like with everything, is making that a challenge.
So before I pass off, I would like to take a look at our requirements contracts that we have within procurement to see how we can lock in prices. We do that with gas, we do that with other commodities, so that there's some predictability as to what the city of Philadelphia's costs are. And then we really just need to figure out 10 toes down how we kind of take timelines instead of one beginning when the other ends, run them synonymously to see if we can't do a little better with this, because every month is a 0.5% increase in inflation. We are getting ready to do, God willing, with this budget, a track and field up on Shimoni Drive. It's going to be a home field for Overbrook and about 10 other schools. From the time we put that out to now, it's been like a third increase in cost. We have to get shovels in the ground quicker and lock down prices faster. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Member Jones. Councilman Jamie Gautier.
Oops. Sorry.
It's on now, Jamie. Council member. Thank you, Council President. Good morning, Managing Director.
Good morning.
My questions are about our support to immigrant communities. According to OIA's budget detail, $450,000 is added to the legal services budget for CLS and PIFUP for assistance with temporary protective status, asylum, and workplace rights. Considering the increased threat to our immigrant communities posed by the Trump administration, advocates have been asking both about increasing this funding to $1.3 million and transferring these legal services to the Defender's Office, which already has dedicated staff for immigration efforts. I would want to hear your position on this request. And I have other questions that I'm going to get on record before you answer. Next, MDO budget documents state that OIA intends to work on increased community outreach and engagement with the aid of a new community engagement plan, and I have several questions about that. One, can you provide some specific details about the engagement plan? Two, given what many have seen, particularly in the community, as a lack of publicly stated support for immigrant communities at this time, do you think that immigrants should feel safe reaching out to the City of Philadelphia and OIA specifically? And what are you doing to build trust in these communities at this time? And then lastly, on the first day of budget hearings, Chief of Staff Tiffany Thurman mentioned that you all were in search of a new executive director for OIA. What is the status of the search, and do we expect the position to be filled by the start of FY26? And I know that's a lot, and I'm happy to repeat questions if need be.
Council President, thank you. I think I'm tracking all those. I'll work backwards. That search is ongoing. The good news is we had a lot of candidates. The other news is we had a lot of candidates. We've narrowed that pool, and the first interviews, I think, are tomorrow, Aubrey? Tomorrow at 5 p.m., or tonight at 5 p.m. So we are actually doing interviews. That is really a key and critical position, that OIA director. So that is, like all of our agency head positions, something that Mayor Parker is taking personal interest in. We want to make sure that we get the best person for that very critical role, what remains a critical role. As far as the dollars, we actually have a $450,000 increase that is going into legal services. Right now, where that lands is under negotiation. We have a couple different possibilities for that, including the Defenders Association. And when our director gets in, first order of business is where do we connect that and make sure that that important work continues. So there actually, dollars are still going into available in FY26 for that work with a new director. And other than that, as far as the trust and the engagement, for us right now as a city, all the supports that were in place continue to exist. So we are continuing to invest, as you can see in the FY26 proposed budget, invest in those services. We're excited to get this new director on board and excited to continue the community engagement work that is underway while we continue to track a very dynamic situation at the federal level.
Small follow-ups. One, I understand that you're in the hiring process, but I think I'm asking if the administration has a position on both increasing the amount of money for legal defense and housing it at the Defenders Association, which already has that as a strength. And you mentioned that we have the same supports in place, but the world isn't the same. The world has changed a lot in the last 3 months, and there is terror in the immigrant community. What do you think? Do you think that what we are proposing responds to that change in the world?
Councilmember, I think what we're proposing is to continue the suite of services that we've provided as a city with city funding. Certainly the Defenders Association and where those dollars, who's going to execute that will be first order of business among several first orders of business for that new director. In terms of how people should feel, that it is our role in the MDO is to focus on the things that we focus on to execute policy, to execute the decisions of this body as well, and to make sure that we are getting functions done on the ground and creating a government that our residents can see, touch, and feel. As far as how folks interact with the federal government and what the federal government does, frankly, that is not something that is within our ability to control.
Okay, my questions were all about local government, but I would hope that we can get some answers about this in this budget cycle, regardless of whether that person is on board. This is an important moment for our city. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Dr. Anthony Phillips.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President. Good morning, Managing Director Thiel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Just wanted to ask you just a couple of questions. The Philadelphia Parks and Rec infrastructure is incredibly important at our recreation centers and our parks. Neighbors are often reporting the importance of paving, lighting, plumbing, roofing, all that and more. I just want to learn more about how your office is supporting our parks and recreation system to assess every recreation center in the city of Philadelphia to kind of understand what is needed for infrastructure and how we can increase capital project budget beyond our ITEF to support the needs of our recreation centers and our parks.
Councilmember, Council President, Philadelphia Parks and Rec, Commissioner Slauson does an amazing job with the resources she has. As you know, this year we're going to be opening over the summer more pools. We have more lifeguards. We've done more with rec centers. Rebuild is continuing apace, thanks to Aparna Palantino and Commissioner Slauson. So I think we are constantly assessing the infrastructure in Parks and Rec. We know there's a lot more that needs to be done, including finishing all of the initial slate of rebuild projects and then doing more. You've heard Mayor Parker talking about this, funding for youth sports. So I think across the entire PPR portfolio, we're investing more. In terms of capital dollars, we have a lot of major projects that we are executing. And I think that assessment that you're talking about is happening all the time because we know we are catching up on literally decades of deferred maintenance. So often, and this is across our entire capital portfolio, Department of Public Property, Free Library, we are constantly balancing what we're trying to do with long-term capital strategic upgrades with the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system broke or the roof leaks and trying to shift those dollars around so we fix the tactical issues while we're continuing to move that strategic work plan forward.
Thank you. I'll follow up later another question around that, but I want to also go to Philly 311. Residents have reported their service requests are marked closed once they are transferred to departments. And I kind of mentioned this also last year about how this, transparency around the 311 system, it creates confusion and frustration for users who expect closure to mean the issue has been addressed and resolved. What steps is your department going to take to ensure that service request statuses reflect actual progress and resolution rather than administrative transfer?
Councilmember, Council President, this is an ongoing challenge. I mean, I just have to be honest about it. Many of the calls that our very dedicated 311 call takers receive are for issues that have nothing to do with city government. We get calls, people ask about how to get a birth certificate, how to get a death certificate, how to fix something with their cable or their telephone bill. So many of those, if it is not within the city's purview to fix, those tickets are closed. Now, I don't want you to think that means we're perfect on all the rest, because we're not. So there's ongoing work with Philly Stat 360 to be able to put all that out there and dashboard that so residents can see that, residents, businesses, and visitors can see that, and ongoing work behind the scenes as we join up in the implementation and the execution chain to make sure that departments are working with other infrastructure providers. For instance, if we get a 311 call about a hole in the ground, say, hypothetically, 16th and Sansom, the city piece of that is the last piece once PGW, AT&T, PECO, the water department, which is part of the city, do everything they need to do in that hole. Then streets can come in, and then and only then can we close the ticket. And that's the kind of thing that we're still working on. Those are long-term projects. We don't have control of all of the entities in that chain. So this is something we're going to have to continue to work on.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson.
Clarification. I have a point of clarification regarding that. Based on your response, Managing Director Teal, is it that when 311 receives a call and when the actual case is sent to the department, is it listed as closed at that point? Because what we find sometimes when there are multiple departments internally in city government that have to touch a case, that once the departments receive it, it doesn't mean that it's actually closed. They're saying that they received it. It doesn't mean that the case has been followed up on. And I'm just asking for that point of clarification because I was here when they implemented 311, and I was in the round of constituent services representatives that they met with to try to stand the system up. And we tried to explain to them when you have multi-department cases, and we've talked about this over the years, so I just want to get that clear on the record for Councilmember Phillips' question, because typically what happens is they close the case when the department receives it, not that it's touching other federal or state entities.
Councilmember, Council President, the short answer to your question is it depends. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we're getting right, is when is the ticket closed? Is it when it's done? Is it when it's transferred? If it has nothing to do with us, we have additional dollars proposed in FY26 for an upgraded 311 app. So this is all something that we're going to have to continue to work on. We're not alone in this. 311 is a very valuable service. We want to make sure that, I think the outcome is to fix whatever the problem is. And that can take time. And certainly closing the ticket when it just goes to the first agency in that implementation chain, that doesn't pass, that doesn't hit the mark. So we are still working on this. I want to be very honest about that. And we will continue to work on it. These are complex and complicated systems, even the ones that we do have ownership of. So we're going to have to keep working on this.
Just 2 seconds.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up, say thank you for your response. Just 2 things I just want to say, if we could consider going forward, maybe a citizen advisory group to help with, ideas and thoughts around how to improve the 311 system and maybe follow up on what their needs are. And then lastly, if we are able to get an assessment on our library infrastructure, our parks and rec infrastructure, get someone to do all those assessments, maybe we can work closely, your office can work closely with the council members in the districts to figure out how we can create a timeline to fix up some of the immediate serious needs of the infrastructure in some of these spaces, and then come up with something where it's like FY27, this will be done, FY26, just a timeline of infrastructure being fixed over the years. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. I'm going to get right into it because of time. The MDO holds a $1.6 million contract with Johnson, Merriman, and Thompson.
Member Harity, could you speak directly more into your
sorry.
microphone, please?
I'm sorry. The MDO holds a $1.6 million contract with Johnson, Merriman, and Thompson for rebuild project management. Can you explain exactly what this contract entails? And I'd also like to know what positions are you having trouble filling and why? And can you explain the discrepancies between FY26's budget positions compared to 25? And what I'm talking about is certain positions are either have no designation of how many employees are going to be where there were employees before. So for instance, the Citizen Police Oversight Commission, FY25 filled positions 22. In FY26, there's no positions. The Defenders Association, they have nothing for 25 or 26, and the Animal Care Control, nothing for 25 or 26. Office of Safe Neighborhoods, 24, and nothing for 26.
Councilmember, let me, Council President, work, I guess, backwards from there. The organizations that you mentioned are not technically within the managing director's office. They are independent entities that manage their own organizations. In the past, they were counted differently as part of this, or some of them have been transferred to other parts of the city organization. So that's the answer to, so those are essentially administrative changes. They're coming out of our display and they will be somewhere else on those
Right, that's what I
organizations'
thought.
books.
So they're like the Defenders, they got their own budget.
Yes, sir. It doesn't mean that they're not gone. They're just,
Right.
they're not being shown here because of administrative changes and the way the budget is displayed.
Got it.
As far as the question about project management, I'm going to call up our Deputy Managing Director for Capital Projects, Aparna Palantino, who is an absolute rock star. We're so thankful to have her and her team. We're continuing to build out her and her team. Hopefully you're already seeing the benefits, I know I am, of this change in the organization where we have brought back and put together CPO. And Aparna's just done an amazing job, and I'm going to let her talk about some of the details. And the specific question you asked about the $1.6 million project management contract for CPO.
Good morning, Aparna Palantino, Deputy Managing Director for Capital Programs. Councilmember Harity, thank you for your question. The contract that you're referencing for JMT was an owner's representative services contract that Rebuild held for a number of years. So they provided various things, assistance with project management, estimating, inspections, also software to be able to help support the Rebuild program.
Okay. How many programs how many developments or fixes did they do in that time frame? How many jobs were they in charge of?
So it's a little bit difficult to answer that because they provided services that sort of covered the entire program. So for example, the software support was for the entire program for all 72 sites, but it wasn't necessarily site specific. But then they did provide services, as I mentioned.
72 was the number of sites?
Of sites that were eligible for rebuild dollars, yes.
72. All right, thank you. I'll wait till the next round for the rest of my questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Nick O'Rourke.
Well, glory to God and power to the people. Director Teal, you come bearing gifts in April. Might be Christmas in April already. I want to just begin by saying how grateful I am for the accolades and the congratulations from members of this body for the work and the advocacy that myself, as well as my team, who works tirelessly to help us to be effective representatives of the people in this gig for as long as we have it. We're not here forever. The ending date, unless the people say otherwise, for my job is December 31st, 2027. And so I'm grateful to be able to do something that I think is going to be meaningful for folks. But more than anything else, beyond the accolades, it is really a testament to, and what I'm grateful for, is that the people themselves are getting what they need on this front. When we really kind of focused on this just in the last 2 weeks, we've heard a couple of comments, several comments and reports from constituents that were advocating around zero fare in particular. Quotes like, "The pass helps me afford groceries and bills. It ensures I can work during the day and have dinner with my kids at night. This program saved my life after 2 years of homelessness," and things like that. These were the sorts of reports that we were asking for, and it really is telling, which is the reason why I am looking forward to hearing what the rollout is as it relates to Key Advantage as well as zero fare. But also, as I mentioned last week, our work as lawmakers is to find ways to make sure that we are measurably and materially improving the lives of working people. And so that's why we're going to go forward with our legislation around the Transit Access Fund that I do continue to solicit the support of my colleagues to making sure that we can make this thing permanent here in the city of Philadelphia. That having been said, I will shift my focus to another pocket of concern for us, the Wellness Village and opioid settlement funds. Can you tell me, Director, what percentage of the city's opioid settlement funds are currently going towards or are planned to go toward the Wellness Village ecosystem?
Councilmember, Council President, I think the settlement dollars are going to a lot of different places. I could probably answer that as saying all of it, because the wellness ecosystem is all-encompassing, as you can see on the display there and the handouts that you all have on your desks. And that really is the former configuration and the former way that a lot of those settlement funds were administered was in sort of a, again, not a joined up and not a strategic approach. That is not to say that the work that was happening and continues to happen with those dollars is not important. It is absolutely important. Everything that these folks are doing is important. It's important for us, though, to the Council President's original point, that we are being strategic about this. We are making sure there's not duplication of effort. We're being efficient and effective. So the first priority for us is to make sure that the entire wellness ecosystem is funded and it works using whatever dollars are available. And those settlement dollars, that is, when you think about what those settlement dollars are for and the origination of those, the genesis of those, if you will, what is more applicable than ensuring that we have these journeys for folks through this wellness ecosystem to housing, et cetera. So we have absolutely changed the way that that is being approached. In terms of these specific allocations and percentages, that's something that we can get to you because there are so many of those different programs and projects. We can get that to you as a memo on follow-up.
Thank you, Director Teal. I heard the bell. I'll come back around for a second round, but the question then becomes what programs actually have been cut or reduced in order to redirect these settlement funds to the Wellness Village. So if you could answer that, that would be great, but again, I can hold my time until the next round.
Councilmember, there are a lot, that's a long list, and so we can certainly get you that specifically on follow-up. I do want one thing to reiterate. The wellness ecosystem is not the Riverview Wellness Village. Riverview is part of the broader ecosystem. So we are using those dollars throughout the entire ecosystem and also at the Riverview Wellness Village. And again, part of the reason we're using those settlement dollars to operate that the alternative to that is largely the general fund right now. So that is why we are making that the priority.
I would, if we could, get those, that list, if that's okay to have that submitted to the chair of what programs, again, that have been cut or reduced in order to redirect all of the settlement funds, because I hear you saying that all of it, to the Wellness Village. Thank you very much.
Councilmember, just as a clarification, nothing's been cut. We just shifted.
Okay.
There have been no cuts. There's just been a shift and a reallocation. So we'll get you that matrix.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Council President. My questions are about reproductive rights. So we know that they're under heavy attack by the Trump administration, including the recent cuts to Title X funding for Planned Parenthood and groups like Abortion Liberation Fund are having to turn away Philadelphians every day who need the funds for reproductive health care. I want to thank the members of the administration for their participation in the Reproductive Freedom Task Force, but can you tell us what the administration is doing to defend and directly fund reproductive services that Philadelphians need? And as we see funding cuts on the federal level, putting a strain on our local providers, has administration increased funding for reproductive health care, and if so, in what ways?
Councilmember, Council President, I'm going to ask our Public Health Commissioner to come up and talk about what the city does in those areas.
Good morning, Council. My name is Dr. Palak Ravel Nelson, and I'm the Health Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. As far as the questions regarding funding, we were notified on March 25th that our COVID dollars, which were supposed to be extended into this fiscal year and next fiscal year, were abruptly cut on March 24th. At that time, we were in council for a hearing, and so finance law, as well as the mayor's office and the MDO's office, were notified immediately. Everybody rallied together, and we worked with our state and other local partners to engage in all sorts of actions we needed to. Our internal team started looking at budget and figuring out how we can move people around. We communicated with the resource hubs, the community-based organizations, and everybody else, so everybody was on the same page. Right now, the temporary restraining order is in place, so our funding is available up until April 17th, and we're keeping an eye on all of this and working, as the managing director has been saying, without silos and working together as a city team.
Thank you for that. My next question is around mobile crisis. We heard from the community members that they would like to see more directly involved in mobile crisis unit, including being hired directly to the teams. What would be the process, or what would it look like to see more community engagement around mobile crisis units, and what do you need to do to make this happen?
I'm going to ask Deputy Managing Director Yates Scale. And Council Member, as I understand your question, it's about how to ensure those services are getting where they're needed?
And including some of the community-based organizations that work alongside and advocated for this program to be included in the process or hired to work alongside.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. I'm sorry, I didn't originally understand the question. The current providers are still providing the mobile crisis service. We are trying to work on reducing the response time, but to get the other CBOs involved and other providers, as you know, the system will require them to apply with a proposal to an RFP process. Once we open that, all of the providers are notified by email that the opportunity is available, but it's not available at this time.
Do you know when the RFP process will be opening up for that?
We can respond to you in writing with that answer.
Thank you so much. And my last question, we're hearing, I think this is very similar to O'Rourke's question, so I'm gonna skip to, nope, I'll save it for the next round.
Thank you, Member Brooks. The chair recognizes Councilman Rue Landau, then Councilmember Bass, then Councilmember Majority Leader Richardson.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, and good morning to the Managing Director's office. I wanted to follow up first on Councilmember Gaudier's PIFUP questions. I had some similar ones as well. And the first question, when we were originally given a briefing from the mayor's office, a budget briefing, the operating for the program was listed as $450,000, but it was listed as an expansion of services, even though it is $50,000 less than the amount appropriated for last year. Can you explain that? Did I get that right?
Actually, no, in FY25, the appropriations for that program was $500,000, and in FY26, it's adding $450,000. So FY '26 would be the 500 plus the 450 for
Okay, it's an
950.
additional 450. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you so much. Also wanted to double down on the request of what the immigrant service agencies want, that this goes to the Defender Association. This is in line with what they do in New York with their knife up. I was a little surprised at Managing Director Teal, at your reaction, that you were distinguishing between feelings and execution of what your job is. And for a lot of us, what is happening to marginalized communities throughout Philadelphia is deeply, deeply felt. It's painful, it's scary, it's terrifying, and we would hope that our city can respond in a way that's not erratically emotional, but has that as a baseline and not just to the execution of a plan.
Councilmember, I appreciate that, and to clarify what I was saying, I certainly, our mission is to execute at the local level and the state level. What I'm saying is my feelings about how things, and again, I don't have that same lived experience, I certainly do have feelings about things that we're seeing at that level, and my mission is to stay focused on the city level and make sure that we are executing things. And as it stands right now, as you heard, not only are we continuing to do all of the things that we did before, we are adding additional dollars to be ready to do more.
We appreciate that so very, very much. Thank you for that. I wanted to also follow up on the wellness questions that we had yesterday. So my understanding is that the budget includes over $133 million in Class 200, which, well, hang on, that the wellness money is going to support the wellness ecosystem, including the wellness court. And so how does the $133 million for Class 200 expenses relate to the $16.6 million for the Office of Community Wellness and Recovery, which will oversee the implementation of the wellness initiative? And then while I get through this real quick, can you detail this $16.6 million, and will it cover the staff at the wellness court?
Councilmember, I think some of those dollars go to support the entire ecosystem, the operations of the entire ecosystem, the Class 200 dollars. So that includes the kind of overhead, which is the Office of Community Wellness and Recovery. They do the contract management. That's as we talked about last year with you all, you said it was very important that we make sure that we have very solid oversight and direct oversight and management of our pieces of this ecosystem. So that is really what Community Wellness and Recovery does. Isabel McDevitt and her team. The Class 200 dollars are for the providers who are providing services. Black Doctors Consortium, Marikey, Gaudenzia, at Riverview, and in other locations around the wellness ecosystem. And the wellness court, Tara.
The Wellness Court, that we have proposed an additional $1 million to the Defenders Association, and that's included in the Defenders Association section of the MDO budget. And that will cover the staffing needs for covering the legal representation for Wellness Court.
And is that in the $16.6 million?
No. That is
That's
under
just the additional $1 million on the side?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's to ensure that folks that are going through that neighborhood wellness court have the representation that is necessary.
One last question while he's not paying attention, a quick one. Is the Office of Immigrant Affairs still under the Managing Director's office?
As it stands right now, the Office of Immigrant Affairs is under the Managing Director's office. As we've talked about, and here too, we work very closely with the law department, especially right now, to understand what is happening daily and dynamically at the federal level. So that is regardless of where that resides administratively, that is an area where we have a great deal of interagency collaboration.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait for my next one.
Thank you, Member Landau. And I'm always watching, Member Landau. That's why I'm here. Councilmember Bass.
Mr. President, good morning.
Good morning,
I want to give a shout
Councilmember.
out to Donald Crowe. Good morning. Is he over there? I don't see see him over there? I'm sorry, I thought I saw Donald Carlton. A couple of questions. One question, I'm on the board for ACCT. And I noticed that the proposal is for $8 million, a little over $8 million, which is not that much more than they receive to date in the current budget. And so I know that, you mentioned in the beginning your proposed budget was $133.9 million, $9 million in Class 200 funding, which included, you specifically mentioned ACCT and the Domestic Violence Hotline. And so when I look at, the fact that we're, it's almost being promoted that we're going to do more for them, but at the same time, we're only giving them about $500,000.
Council President, the proposed budget includes a $921,000, so almost $1 million increase in what we're paying ACCT. That is for anticipated collective bargaining agreement related increases for their staff compensation, insurance coverage, care supplies, and additional veterinary staff. So we are, I think it's, while ACCT, a very important organization to us and a contractual relationship that we have, I think that while I've only been in the MDO for a little bit, I think that's one of the most substantial increases that ACCT has had in some time.
So it says here $8,099,250. So, but you said it was actually $9 million. Like, I don't understand.
Councilmember, the increase, year-over-year increase that's proposed is an additional $921,000 from 25 to 26. So we're actually investing almost $1 million more in ACCT for the things that I mentioned.
I'm going to come back to you because I don't think that those numbers are accurate. So I'm going to come back to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And just ask about that. Another quick question, and then I have a much longer question. The Philly Flush public restroom, are these Portland Loos? Are these
Yes, council member, there's one.
I thought we weren't using those anymore because they broke down. We couldn't get parts. It was a problem. Why are we still doing that program if we can't get parts when they break down? And I was told like 2 years ago that we weren't going to use the Portland Loo anymore.
Council member, I have one of our colleagues join us, Deputy Manager Director Yates Gale, to talk about that. I think the short answer is because there still is a salient need, and you're right, it seems like they're not great.
There's definitely a need, but the product itself, there's more than one product, I guess is my point. And that product is a problem. So why are we still using the product that when it breaks down, we can't get the parts, this restroom is out of service, and this is like just one particular brand. Why aren't we using, other brands? And actually, hold that because I really want to just ask my other question, which is much more substantive and important to me. So the Support Center for Child Advocates under Legal Services. I don't know if you saw today's Inquirer article about the, basically the city's dereliction of duty when it comes to children who are in the foster care system and the high rate of child separation that we have here in Philadelphia. And we did have a conversation with DHS sometime, like in the last week or so, and talked to them about what the numbers were. I know Kimberly Ali didn't have the numbers available, but according to this article, it's much more troubling than what was presented here. And so when I looked at, again, page 11 on the document you provided, the proposed funding for fiscal year 26 is a little over $7 million. Now, when you look down, when you look at every department that was listed in your presentation, in your briefing, every department has a set of strategic goals and has a set of performance measures, except for this one. And I find that very disturbing because this is a department, according to your own description, that it's a legal representation for individuals who are in need but cannot afford an attorney. The Support Center for Child Advocates represents child victims of abuse and neglect, including new dependency cases and in criminal cases related to their victimization. Community Legal Services represents vulnerable populations, including indigent families and seniors, as they seek to access social service programs. So we put $7 million here, and yet we have no strategic goals and no performance measures in every other department here does have goals and performance measures. Please explain.
I'm going to take that one. Tara Moore, I'm the first Deputy Managing Director. The Legal Services Division it represents a combination, a collaboration with a couple of other different departments. And so in some of these contracts that you see here, it's a collaboration with external departments. And so we can work with them to come up with those performance measures and the strategic goals, but sometimes the funding that we have here, the funding is allocated to the Managing Director's Office to match and to supplement and augment some of the investments in other departments. So for example, the Support Center for Child Advocates contract that you referenced, that's our contribution is a supplement and augmentation to the funding that DHS also provides. So there's sometimes where there's a cross-section and a collaboration on those particular contracts.
Well, I was going to ask, is there sort of any coordination with DHS on what, like what's the plan?
Beyond your time, Member Bass.
Yes.
Wrap it up, please.
Okay, yes, sir. So, but I do want to say this. When I think about what was printed in today's Inquirer, and trust me, I'm not, going exclusively on their word, but it was extremely disturbing to me. The idea that we have given so little thought, that we have provided no goals, no recommendations, no performance measures, and I understand it's sort of like a collabo with all these different departments. That's still not acceptable. This is our most vulnerable population, and when we look at who's shooting who in the neighborhood, it's 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. It's not, when I was coming up, it was more like 18 to 20, 21, 22. They're much younger now, and that's because we're missing the mark, and we're missing the mark in many different departments based on, what's presented here by the city. Like we don't even have any goals for this department. We're spending $7 million just like a giveaway, and we don't even have any requirements for how are we going to fix this situation. I think that it needs to be in here like it's in here for every other department that was listed.
Councilmember, certainly appreciate and understand the importance of that. And again, the reason that that's not in there is it's essentially part of the way the budget's displayed.
I understand.
We pass those dollars on to other entities that do that. And moreover, the Managing Director's Office can't do direct oversight because we sometimes are involved in court proceedings.
I'm not asking for direct oversight. I'm saying that it should be a part of your conversation and expectation as we're handing money over. We should be saying, what are we getting for this and how are we making things better? And that should be reflected here.
Councilmember, we'll certainly talk to our partners who execute those programs and see how we work with the Budget Office to get those displayed in the future.
Thank you.
Did you want an answer on the loo?
Go ahead,
the public toilets?
Go ahead.
Good morning, council member. The Philly Flush model is no longer using the Portland Lou model. Yeah, and we have contracted with the provider to provide real-time, quick repair service. We'll check and respond to you in your office about the Philly Flush that's in your district. That one is a little aside from the other two because it's a rebuild project, so we'll make sure that we have the repairs associated with that one.
Where is it?
Vernon Park, ma'am. You have one in Vernon Park, there's one outside.
That's a Portland Lou.
Right, that one is no longer being used. That model is no longer being used. We are building one in Clark Park as we speak, as we go through the L&I process. And then the next Philly Flush we will be doing community engagement in South Philadelphia.
So I'm without a bathroom now in Vernon Park? I just want to...
I'm sorry?
So we don't have a bathroom anymore in Vernon Park? Is that what you're saying?
No, you do.
So
the model, we need to make sure that our repair contract covers that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Just a brief follow-up. The Support Center for the Child Advocate, who are we partnering with? Who's the contractor with in regards to helping provide the services for the Support Center for the Child Advocate?
So the contract is with the Support Center for Child Advocates.
It's with the Support Center for Child Advocate, okay.
And that contract is partially funded by the Managing Director's Office and then also partially funded by the
So to
Department
get
of
clarity,
Services.
we're partnering with the Support Center for Child Advocate, but they don't have a strategic plan and goals in terms of how we're addressing the advocacy issues on behalf of the youth. Is that correct?
Council President, I'm not prepared to say what the support center does or does not have in terms of their strategic planning. That is something we can work with DHS to get on follow-up.
All right.
Because they're a separate organization and because
But we're funding them.
we are funding them.
Money is
and
coming from us, the same way like money go through OHS. OHS partners with other entities, correct, to provide a service.
we and DHS fund them to provide a service, and we are also conflicted out of providing direct oversight because of the way the court proceedings unfold. And I don't think it is at all unreasonable to ask for an understanding of what their strategic goals are, how they're spending the dollars.
Before this process is over, can you get back with a report to the chair, members of this body regarding, we want to be fiscally responsible, right? Transparency, accountability on behalf of the taxpayers. And so when we talk about, what Member Bass talked about, our most vulnerable citizens, which are our youth, our children, if any area we're going to advocate and make sure folks doing right by is done, because they don't have lobbyists walking in these halls asking for support. They don't have individuals who are getting paid in a government relations position coming and asking us to fight on their behalf. So I just wanted to follow up on that line of questioning. The chair has asked Councilmember Bass briefly.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I just have to say, like, I just find it so egregious that so little thought was given to this. We put more thought, and I'm a board member, as you know, I love my fur babies for ACCT. We put more thought into the dogs and cats than we did into the children. I mean, like, come on now, y'all, you got to do better. Who put this report together that thought it was okay to type that there were no strategic goals and no performance measures? Like, who did the document that didn't flag you all and say, this is a problem, we shouldn't present this?
Duly noted for the record. The chair recognizes Dr. Phillips.
Yeah, I've also been relatively concerned about funding for ACCT because right now in a lot of cities, a lot of parts of our city, raccoons, other rodents are literally going across the city, and ACCT response is that they don't have the ability to capture these loose animals that can be treated by them in these spaces because of certain parameters. But if they had a little bit more support and goals, maybe that could be something that could be helpful. And I'm just trying to figure out why, such as like a raccoon problem, is not even, supported with the funding from ACCT.
Okay, so I want to call on Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson, but we'll expect that report, and then I just think as a part of conversations that we'll have with the Borough and Finance, I mean, if we're going to be fiscally responsible, in order for this body to sign off on it, then we need to see something we feel confident in for us to sign off on. So I don't mind going on record for saying that as we move forward. But thank you, sir. The chair recognizes Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson, then we're going into our second round.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Managing Director Teal and Tara and your entire teams. I wanted to just go through the detail. So if you have the detail, I think that would be helpful. You have it, Tara? Okay.
Majority Leader, could you speak into the microphone,
Yes,
please?
surely, Council President. My apologies for the delay. So I'm going to go only on the detail for my first round of questions. You have a copy of the detail in front of you so we can speak with the same information. So I want to start with Section 43 of the FY26 operating budget for the Managing Director's Office. I'm back at page 171, 172, and you can include 170 as well. And so this is strictly around Program Office of Workforce Development. And so if you could detail for me very quickly the Office of Workforce Development as it relates to the Managing Director's Office. And I know most of these are grants that have been awarded. I'm very clear on that. But it states that it's under the program of Office of Workforce Development under the Managing Director. Could you just detail that for the record?
Yes, Thank you for the question. The Office of Workforce Development, in particular these grants, are legacy grants that had been in existence in the Managing Director's Office when the Office of Workforce Development had existed in the Managing Director's Office in prior fiscal years.
And when was it, and for the record, can you say when that was?
Probably around FY21. However, I have not been with the Managing Director's Office except for only 1 year, so I cannot, FY21, but we would want to double check that and get back to you.
Okay, and for the record, the Office of Workforce Development grants that are listed that the city received that are ongoing, because some started back in 2020, was when Workforce Development was technically under the Managing Director's Office. Obviously, it would have to be at least 2020, right? Because that's what the documents state. I just wanted to get that on the record. Now I'm going to go to, again, Section 43, page 28, under Program Administration and Policy. First line for Class 250, Professional Services, Chicago Women in Trades. Could you just explain what that's about?
Councilmember, can you repeat the page
Sure,
reference?
Section 43, page 28, Program Administration and Policy, the first listing under the Centralized Infrastructure Strategy for Professional Services, 0250, which is Class 250, Chicago Women in Trades.
Yes, ma'am. And what is, yes, I can confirm that that is there. And the question is, what is that for?
Yes, could you talk to us more about Chicago Women in Trades?
The details of that,
Mike Carroll.
Excellent.
thank you.
And as quickly as possible, because I have a number of items that I need to get on the record in this section. Thank you.
So that was a grant where we are working with several local apprenticeships, and Chicago Women's in Trades has a presence here in Philadelphia where they'll be providing training opportunities for apprentices who come from Philadelphia communities.
Okay, so even though it says Chicago Women in Trades,
They're national.
they're national and they have a footprint here in Philadelphia. Because that sticks out to me, because I'm like, we have Philadelphia Women in Trades.
Yeah, these folks are very talented at working with young women in sectors where they're underrepresented. And so the mayor was aware of their work. They did establish a local presence, and so they are doing the work here in Philadelphia on behalf of Philadelphia residents.
Okay, and they're working with Philadelphia residents. Okay, thank you. And I wanted to put that on the record. We do have Philadelphia Women in Trades. We have WINK, Women in Non-Traditional Careers. And so I wanted to put that on the record for those organizations that we've just hosted here in council who also do wonderful work. I wanted to then go to Section 43 again, page 26. And I hear the bell, so I'm going to try to get all this in. Section 43, page 26, under Administration and Policy for the Managing Director's Office, again, Class 250, Professional Services and Support Services for the city. I see listed here Joseph, third line down, Joseph A. DeLuca Advisory and Consulting, $350,000 for contracted services, for OHS Fiscal Consultant. Could you talk about what that's for?
Yes, we would like to invite.
We'll have Cheryl Hill, who's our OHS director, answer that question specifically.
Okay, and to repeat, just to ensure it was heard correctly, is Section 43, page 26, third line down under Support Services, Joseph A. DeLuca Advisory and Consulting, $350,000 for FY25 estimated obligations. There's nothing under FY26 proposed budget, but it states OHS Fiscal Consultant.
Good morning. Thank you, Majority Leader. Cheryl Hill, Executive Director of the Office of Homeless Services. DeLuca is currently working with us to go through our fiscal operations to make sure that we have some key controls in there, as well as come up with some streamlined processes to make sure that we can manage our finances and make sure that we are keeping in line with all the policies and procedures.
Okay, excellent. And so I'll have additional questions. I think now it's on May 5th. For OHS, but I wanted to get that on the record since it was under the MDO's budget line item. And again, on the same page, under 0 to 90, after you go through the payment for care of individuals. And I'm not going to name all the organizations that are listed, but underneath the last line, it states, under Women of Excellence, Inc., vendors to be determined, $338,539. Would you be able to detail that information for us today on the record, as I see that it's only listed under fiscal 2025 estimated obligations and no listing for fiscal 2026 proposed budget for service providers?
I'll take that question if that's okay. Tara Moore.
Yes.
The vendor to be determined, that should say various, and we can lay out the details of that information for you in a memo following this proceedings.
Okay, my respectful request is that we receive the information on the second round today. Since there's nothing listed for fiscal 2026 proposed budget, and we're almost at the end of the fiscal year, that would mean that you all would have that information or no?
If I can clarify, we are currently in our RFP process for some of our programs, and as a result, we didn't list vendors. That's why it says to be determined. We actually have open RFPs at this time.
Okay, so let me go back, because help me understand. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Under FY, just section 43, page 26, under FY 26 proposed budget is all blank, okay? And so when you go on FY 25 estimated obligations, you see that it's $338,539. The fiscal year will be over June 30th, correct?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so then the question is, you're RFPing for these services and they'll be able to provide them by June 30th? I'm really asking for clarification.
Yes, so the FY26 expenditures and the planned expenditures, you will see those in OHS's budget. And where there are RFPs, it may say vendors to be determined, but anything that is FY26, that is all within OHS. The vendors to be determined that are under the FY25 estimated obligation, again, that is simply an error. Those are various that were probably a little bit too small to list out individually. And again, we can provide you that detailed information about what's in that 338. I apologize, I didn't.
Right, the 338, 539. Would you be able to provide that today in our second round after we take a break?
After we take a break.
And the reason why I'm asking is because, you know, I don't want to say this, but this is my 25th year here. Okay, and this is a process, right? And what happens is when we get the information at a later time, it doesn't enable us to fully review the information in enough time to then provide adequate additional response before the conclusion of this process. And we know that the budget hearing for OHS has been moved to May 5th, right? So we may have a little more time in this instance, but initially it was supposed to be next week. And so if we could get the information today, I think that would be helpful based on everything we know to be true from the last year. And I'll come back on the second round just to place my other questions on the record, specifically and only about the detail and the information that is provided on the papers.
Councilmember, we'll try to get you that today. If not, then certainly before the OHS hearing.
Right, because, I mean, you understand the way it's listed, it's very hard to go through each one, and I think it's important for us to know that information. I heard my colleague, Councilmember Gaudier, who's Chair of Housing, talk about the $5 million in question as well at a previous hearing, so we need this information. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council President. I'll come back on the second round with the remainder of my questions under Section 43 of the budget detail.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Councilmember Young, before we go into the second round, you have a question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just first question is a similar line of questioning to our Majority Leader. I looked at
Member Young, speaking to the microphone.
Sorry, thank you. I looked at the appropriations for some of the vendors for Otis, and it says to be determined. I'm just wondering if you can give us some of those vendors? Because I do know, for example, it says there was $75,000 appropriated for 2025 for the intercity bus operations, and I do know that that study is currently going on, so vendors should be selected for that. So if you could provide us with some of these vendors that say to be determined when we have appropriated those funds for last year, that would be helpful. It says the Otis, Tabor Ave Design, Neighborhood Bikeway Planning, Kelly Drive Signal, Curb Protected Bikeways, those things like that. So we do know those things that money has been spent or is being spent, and so can we, be helpful if we know who those vendors are for those particular programs? That's first question. And second question is, of course, related to Philly Home at Girard. Can you tell us what the capacity of that current facility is, and if you plan to exceed that capacity in the future?
Council President, I'll do the second question first. The capacity of Philly Home at Girard is 180 beds right now. The daily census changes daily with demand, and right now, we think that is the capacity that we're going to keep, given the current situation and our continued investments across the rest of the wellness ecosystem.
Thank you.
And now for Mike Carroll to talk about the vendors.
So the work with the intercity bus operation primarily has been with the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation. We've also engaged with Kimley Horm Associates for some study that's unrelated to the existing operation on Spring Garden Avenue.
But there are also a list of other, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 or 7 other Otis-related appropriations that were made that say vendors to be determined. So just want to see where we can, this is on page 28. So I just want to see if we could get some information on those vendors as well.
I'll work to get you some detail. I'm trying to, I'm going to need to check to see whether these have been awarded or the work orders have been initiated on these to be determined ones.
Thank you. I mean, I'm only asking because, I mean, it's a lot of to be determined here for that particular, I guess, department. And I know that in that particular space, there aren't too many like minority, women-owned, black and brown firms that do that type of work. So it is helpful for us to see who's actually doing that work.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Councilmember, we'll get you, to the extent we can, detailed answers to that. Sometimes if there's an RFP process underway, then we can't specifically answer those questions, as you know. And the other thing with this is obviously these processes are always working not even in parallel. Sometimes they're linear, sometimes they're in parallel. So the procurement processes is one of the reasons why we have to get the authorization appropriation, and then procurement is the next step. So
Yeah,
we'll get you whatever we can.
We understand that, but again, as the council majority leader said, we're almost 3 months at the end of this fiscal year, so, I believe that some of those things should be in motion. But thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're now officially going into our second round. My question is, the Office of Emergency Management requests $2 million for emergency fund pilot for FY26, and it's described to be used for unseen emergency situations such as unanticipated disaster recovery needs. So I just want to get an idea. I know it's going to be housed under the Finance Department, and so I want to get an idea of how this fund specifically will be used, and I want to make sure, and it seems like it's more a discretionary fund. It's going to be housed under the Finance Department. So I just want to get an idea of how the funds are going to be used. And then also, how are we preparing to deal with AI and cyber attacks? Are we prepared? Are we doing anything regarding being on the forefront of preventing any type of cyber attack, any type of AI attacks? I know during last year, some company that's supposed to be protecting us kind of had our system go down for maybe a day or two, but nevertheless, it did freeze operations throughout the country. And so what are we doing from an emergency management standpoint to be on the forefront in the event that a cyber attack does happen here in the city of Philadelphia?
Council President, definitely appreciate your awareness and concern that we share about cybersecurity and the potential impact of AI. In fact, I just finished my mandated cybersecurity awareness training that our Office of Information Technology does, and that was a key point in there. So that is, in the city, that is largely an OIT responsibility, securing our system, so that question is probably better directed to them. I can tell you, again, going back to your very first question, we have a regular call with OIT, OEM, our managing director's office. We are always in that call, Tara and I, because it is that important. So we work very closely with Melissa Scott and her team, with Camille, and Dominic also works very closely with them. So it is definitely something, securing our internal systems, and that's really the OIT job. The OEM component of that, and this bleeds over into your first question, is the consequence management. If we have an issue, as we did, that incident was sort of a preview of what it might look like, and I have to say our team did an amazing job across agencies, across government, and beyond in addressing that. Could have been a lot worse. I think everybody understands that. So it certainly is something that we are very focused on, and we'll make sure that OIT, I'm sure they'll have a more fulsome briefing on that when it is their turn. In terms of the unanticipated needs pilot, the short answer to that is a contingency fund. It's a pilot. We have seen almost every year, and I don't want to, from my former business, I don't want to speak anything into existence, so I'll knock wood. We know what happened earlier this year in the Northeast, and that was a substantial cost to the city. So it seems like at least every year that I've been here for the past 9 years, there has been something that is truly unanticipated, that we could not predict, that requires our entire city force to mobilize, as they did during the plane crash, work together with intergovernmental, interagency partners, and get it done. So that $2 million is there as a contingency for when the next thing that we can't anticipate, or some of the things we might be able to anticipate if we do have a severe weather event. Not I'm talking about the quote-unquote routine snowstorms and weather events like that. If we were to have another hurricane or another derecho or something we have not had to worry about that now we do, wildfires within the city and urban conflagrations. We had 5 significant events last year. We've already had 1 this year. So that really is what those dollars are for, sir.
I would like for Sue Slauson, Parks and Recreation Commissioner, please come to the table.
Council President, another one of our rock stars, as you know. She hates when I say that. But.
Good morning, Sue Slauson.
Good morning, Susan. First and foremost, I just want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank you for coming back to the city of Philadelphia. One of the smartest decisions that our mayor has made by tapping you to come back and have you take helm of Park and Recreation. So I just want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank my good friend Frank Faby. He's out there somewhere, who also does a lot of work when I'm calling him day in and day out regarding Parks and Recreation. Just want to get an idea in terms of the summer months that are coming. Plans around programming for our youth, plans around safety of our youth at the various recreation sites, and also around staffing our pipeline, non-traditional pipeline, I would like to say, bringing more individuals who volunteer at rec centers, right, may not take the civil service test, right, may not have a degree, but still want a pathway into becoming a Parks and Rec employee. So those are the 3 questions that I just have. Want to get an update from you on and how we can be supportive of your efforts in keeping our young people safe. My nana taught me as a kid, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. And so when I wasn't at Shoe Playground, getting my lunch through the lunch program and going swimming, and the camp was free, I was probably down in FDR Park or Center City, probably getting involved in something I wasn't supposed to be getting involved in as a kid, just to be quite frank. But keeping our young people involved is something that's critically important. So just give us an update, please.
Thank you, Council President. we are not only working Parks and Recreation, it is a collaborative effort. Mayor Parker talks often about One Philly. It is not just Parks and Recreation that's working to ensure that we have programs throughout the city of Philadelphia to ensure that we can provide opportunities for young people everywhere throughout the city to have something fun, to have a job, to be able to swim. So I'll start with our pools. Last year we had 59 pools open. This year we'll have 63 thanks to Aparna. A number of the rebuild facilities are now opened, and on top of our pools being open, that's an opportunity economic for our young people. Pools are critical for the summer. They're critical for safety, they're critical for fun, they're critical for enjoyment, but it's an opportunity for us to hire. We look to hire at least 400 lifeguards. We look to hire at least 400 PMAs, pool maintenance attendants. So there are job opportunities that help support our young people to keep them off the streets. But on top of those job opportunities, we hire at least 1,200 young people, which is a part of our C2L program, for the summer.
What's the name of the program?
Community Career to Learning. I forget one of those C's. Career Connected Learning. And so we get an opportunity to hire 1,200 young people to work in our Parks and Rec facilities. And we are excited about that because, you know, it's not, you talked about staffing. We have opportunities for employment, but we don't always have people that put in for our jobs. We don't always have people that want to work in our rec facilities. So we have the jobs. We need the people. And so we're hoping that as we bring these 1,200 young people in year after year after year, that they want to become a part of Parks and Recreation. You asked about staffing. We have opportunities that we haven't always had. We call them ROWs, recreational workers. So there were young people, middle-aged people of all ages working in our facilities as volunteers because they couldn't pass tests. So we came up with an opportunity for those people that couldn't pass our tests to come into our system. I don't have the exact number. I will have that next week of how many ROWs that we've hired, and we're still in the process of hiring ROWs. But on top of those ROWs, we've changed some of the specs in our job requirements to ensure that people that we were asking for specific degrees, we've changed it just to have a degree. So you don't have to have a specific education degree to come and be a part of Parks and Recreation. So we've been doing a whole host of things to make sure we can bring people in. This is the first year in 5 years that we've brought back ARLs. Those are our seasonal, part-time, permanent positions. Again, I want to say, I don't want to make the number up, and I don't want to give you a number, but this is the first year that we have been able to hire ARLs in our systems. So we have the jobs, we have the opportunities. We're looking for people to come and want to be a part of Parks and Recreation. As a matter of fact, this Saturday, we're having a job fair. It was supposed to be at the Dell Music Center, but because it's going to rain, we're moving it inside of Mander Recreation Center. So I think this summer, I want to go back to summer programming. We have 130 camps that we will be providing. 49 of those camps are already filled. So people are using and we have affordable camps. We have opportunity for waivers for those parents that can't afford to pay for their young people to come to our camps. But on top of that, because it's all about safety, we want parents to know that our places are safe, regardless of what has happened. We have this amazing partnership with the Philadelphia Police Department. Last year, we had a meeting with all the commanders, each district, all of our rec leaders, all our program directors, and we exchanged not only phone numbers, but they set up programs in each of our districts. They ran basketball tournaments, they had movie nights, they came out. This is the best community policing that you can possibly have because they partner with what we do in our facilities to make sure that they're not just showing up when there's a problem. They're showing up in our rec centers, 1, to let people know that they're there, 2, to provide that community service, and 3, to also be eyes and ears for us. And I think that's an amazing opportunity in addition to our rec leaders running programs, having police officers there running programs with our staff. We also have our teen nights. We locked down the Oval right down here in Center City, where we purposely have opportunities for young people to come. They listen to music, we provide games. It is just for them, but we expanded that. It's not just at the Oval. We do it throughout the city of Philadelphia now, because we recognize if we provide these opportunities, they will come. I'm sure there are a whole lot of things going on, and I'm drawing a blank right now, sir.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Keep with a focus on specifically supporting our young people.
I just thought about something else.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So I want to keep in mind that the mayor gave us that additional $3.2 million in our budget, and we've been able to offer 70 grants to community members that have been putting money out on their own, running programs in everyone's community, and so that right there has been huge for us.
How much of those grants, on average, how much of the grants for the community
You can
groups
get
do you
from
know?
$5,000 to $25,000. It's,
Okay.
yeah, depending on your program, how big it is, how many young people you're serving, you can get up to $50,000. The money is there. We have criteria that they have to follow, but we have 70 people, 70 organizations that have already put in. Awesome. We're also, with that grant funding, we've been able to have specific training for coaches. We all know that we've been having challenges with coaches and some of the issues with just behavior, character, and so we've been training our coaches as well. We have used some of this funding to do trauma training in our facilities, and it's just been amazing what we've been able to do. We're also able to provide additional equipment. There's some old equipment throughout our system, and with this funding, we've been able to replace a lot of the equipment that's been there for decades. So we're supporting basketball, soccer. So you want to
Are we
ask me a
doing an
question?
equitable analysis
Absolutely.
of the parks and recreation centers throughout the city just to make sure that the resources that we're providing are equitably distributed across the neighborhoods?
We absolutely are. There's some neighborhoods we don't need support with basketball. There's some neighborhoods where they are fine when it comes to soccer and funding. Our purpose, and it's intentional, that we're looking at those zip codes where people are struggling. Those zip codes where we know that we need to have additional opportunities for sports, and also not just sports. We have opportunities for whether it's our, what's it called? I'm not a, what do you?
Gaming?
Gaming, yeah,
Yes,
I'm
that's
sorry.
Mr. Thomas's, was getting ready.
Yes.
Elaborate on that. I remember during COVID, we had a partnership with one of the gaming companies to allow our young people during that period to engage in gaming.
Well, one of the things, and I don't know how many facilities, I have all that information written down, but we actually have extended our gaming to other additional recreation centers, as opposed to, I think there were 6. We've been extending our gaming opportunities. I heard Councilmember Jones whisper polo. We have opportunities that we're working with Dr. Deborah Carrera, where we're going to offer opportunities for that extended school. She's going to identify young people that will be a part of Work to Ride, our equestrian opportunities for our young people as well.
Okay. And last question, and you could be brief on it, but have we thought, police can't be everywhere, right? Are we thinking outside the box in terms of maybe public-private partnerships with civilian individuals to help patrol and be eyes and ears at our rec centers and our playgrounds, right? Because no matter what we do, we just don't have the manpower to have an officer at every single playground, but at least in a high, let's say the 57 blocks, so to speak, where we know there's high poverty, we see high crime, we see gun violence, right? And as opposed to, because you're not going to have an officer at every specific park or rec center, but the same way we have Center City District ambassadors, the same way we have University City District ambassadors. To a civilian or the average person, when you see them come riding down the street on a bike patrol, because you know somebody's watching, you're more apt to not get involved in something that's negative, right? Have we explored outside the box that type of partnership?
I think that's something that we can definitely look into, but I will say one of the successes that I've seen in our rec facilities are those people that live in the community, those men specifically, and even some women, because some of the women, the grandmoms that have the eyes and the ears, it's really about relationships, it's about respect, it's about those people that live in that community, know those young people, and young people will get checked by certain people. So those advisory council members that we depend on so often are key to helping us police our facilities, are key to working with the rec leaders. They're not getting paid, but they're supporting because they live in the neighborhoods and they care about the neighborhoods. I find that people that have the relationship, I'll use you for instance, I'll use myself, I won't use you. When you're young, when you were young, there were certain people that you didn't cross.
It's the same, yes.
And so those are the people that we're looking for that know the community, that know the neighborhood to be in our rec facilities. And most of those people are volunteers.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again, whatever we can do to be supportive of your efforts, especially around the children, you know, I know how this process works, but whatever we can do to increase support your particular department, let us know. I have just one last question, not for you, just for Ms.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Council
very
President.
much. Aparna Palantino. And I also want to thank Mr. Alan Joinville for his work with Parks and Rec. Been working with him for many of years, always being responsive. Aparna, because I'll email you any time of the day asking for an update on my rebuild project, guiding me through the process. Vera's coming along great. Myers is coming along great. We have Chew, the work that we've done at Chew is moving forward. And so majority of my rebuild projects are moving forward. But what's the future for rebuild, right? Give us a brief status update of rebuild. I know we're pretty much at the end of our borrowing. We're paying more than what we borrowed for in terms of the whole beverage tax and so forth, but it's a very, very highly successful program in terms of making sure we have equitable, high-quality recreation centers and parks, regardless of your zip code. And so it's something I would like to continue supporting as we move forward.
So thank you for your question, Council President. As far as the original list of 72 sites goes, we have completed approximately 36 sites. There's another 16 or so either in construction or getting ready to go into construction, with the balance in design or engagement. We, the mayor's office and the administration, of course, have committed to completing out the rebuild initiative. What we're not certain of is whether we call it rebuild in the future or it becomes part of the capital program. Essentially, it's similar work that we're doing, just a different source of funds at the moment. So we are always committed.
When you say different source of funds, are we talking general funds or us floating another bond?
So rebuild was, actually for rebuild, there's only been 2 bonds floated. The last 130 million roughly will go out potentially this fall. So there is still rebuild money to be secured.
You don't anticipate us needing to borrow more to finish up the remaining rebuild projects to complete the total 72?
At this time, not all of them have gotten into design. So once we've gotten into design and actually have hard numbers, we'd be able to determine that.
But $1 million question, because really it's not, you're new to the position, but we know your expertise. How do we streamline the rest of these projects so we can pretty much get them done?
So if you've noticed in the last year or so, we've been able to move many of them forward much more quickly. In combining the 3 units under the Capital Program Office, we have the ability to use different contracting methods now that either Parks and Rec or Department of Public Property capital teams were already using, and that has helped us to move these projects much quicker.
Okay. Thank you, Aparna. I appreciate your leadership, your hard work, and your dedication to always picking up the phone, even if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, so I appreciate you being responsive. We're in round 2 officially. The chair recognizes Council Member Curtis Jones.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Just for the record, so that we're keeping accurate accounts of who's who and where they live, Sue Slosson's from the 4th District. We claim her, born and raised just like Will Smith in West Philadelphia. So, and we used to have you moved out, I don't know why. Well, maybe one pothole or two that you didn't fix, you left, I don't know.
I like to share, Councilmember.
Okay. So what I'd like to focus on is something that many of us in this chamber experienced when we went away to visit Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. And what we saw was a city that was prepared to welcome visitors, some of them for the first time. And I was in a cab, and the cab driver said inadvertently, you know, I don't know, are we glad you're here because they're cleaning up places that ain't been cleaned in decades. And when we were at the hotel downtown, one of the people standing outside, he was smoking a cigarette, and he said, where are my homeless people today? Like, I don't know how they did what they did, but they made a concerted effort from the time you hit the airport to the expressway where there might have been graffiti, to the points of contact at hotels, cabs, and other means of mass transportation. They got their act together. So I guess what I'm asking us is, and I don't want to story steal from my colleague Isaiah Thomas, as we look to FIFA, as we look to all of the other events that are coming down, how are we doing our little facelift for our city, from everything from medians and streets that probably could use a little tender love and care, a little planting, so that people experiencing Philadelphia for the first time won't make it the last time and come back to enjoy our city. And I know and I guess the other part of that question is, are we partnering with the railroads, Amtrak, CMX, to deal with those corridors, from corridors to bridges, to just spruce up?
Councilmember, Council President, certainly appreciate the question. You know, Chicago is my hometown. Philly's way better. Let me just put that on the record.
Good answer.
And this is, to your point, everything we are doing, safe, clean, green, with access to economic opportunity for all, is about, first and foremost, our residents and businesses who are here now, who've been here, and will continue to be here. And next, for visitors. The good news is all those things line up. Safer, cleaner, greener, with access to economic opportunity for all. That's good for everybody who's here, and that's exactly what we need and want for all of those visitors. So this is one of the reasons that we've put wellness and this wellness ecosystem at the forefront. Is we need to have, I think, everybody, for various reasons, everybody that I've talked to, we hear from you all, certainly hear from folks, the same people that you hear from, and others. We know that having unhoused folks in the street is not good for those folks, and it's not good for our city for a variety of reasons. And people have different reasons for that. For me, as a former healthcare provider, it's about taking care of people and giving them an environment where they can get better. And that is what we're doing. That's what we've been doing with the wellness ecosystem. That is what we're going to continue to do. And the good news is that also helps folks who don't want to have some of the ancillary activities that come along with that in front of their business, in front of their home, the not clean things that come along with that. So that is part of our safety commitment, other safety commitment, making sure that we have the law enforcement presence that we need all the time, first and foremost here in the city for residents and businesses, and then for visitors in 2026. So even the question about some of the efforts around the highways, that's exactly Mayor Parker's vision, and you're seeing the execution of that. We want to make sure that when people get on any road in the city, they don't know that it is a quote-unquote federal highway or a state highway or a city road. They don't know the difference. Our visitors don't know the difference. Many of our residents don't know the difference, and they don't need to know. We are going to treat all of that the same to make sure that we're improving those conditions. I certainly see it every day. Our Director of Clean and Green, Carlton Williams, I see it. I spend a lot of time walking around here and other places in the city. We're seeing it. We are seeing the difference. I hear people, they stop me on the street, they see the difference. And we know there's a lot more to do, which is why we're continuing to make investments in all of those areas, because we know that companies coming, and it's the same things we need for the people who live here, work here, and make a living here. And, oh, by the way, play here, to the previous question.
So to your point, when my country cousins come to town, we do a little extra cleaning up, gardening and stuff like that, so we make a good impression so that they feel, A, welcome, but also want to come back. And one good event begets another. If people come to Philadelphia and have a good experience, then they want a barbecue, right? They want to come back for Thanksgiving, and they want to come back for Christmas or whatever holiday. So if we can put our best foot forward during this period of time, we have an opportunity to make repeat customers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Member Jones. Councilman Jamie Gaultier.
Thank you, Council President. I wanted to follow up on some of my colleagues' questions around 311. In FY24, 43% of 311 survey respondents rated themselves as, quote, service detractors, meaning they are dissatisfied. This is a sizable portion. So I wanted to ask you, what are the main drivers of dissatisfaction? Does it stem from the service request process itself, so difficulty using the system, or from the outcome, the city departments not resolving issues promptly? How is Philly 311 working with operating departments to close the loop on requests and improve the overall satisfaction rate? And would more transparency or publicly tracking each department's response times help accountability for those unresolved service requests? And then lastly, as the central hub for non-emergency issues, 311 data can highlight where city services are falling behind. Does the MDO use Philly 311 metrics to guide other departments' budget or staffing needs?
Council President, I think I'm tracking all those. The answer to the last question is yes, we do, and we're working very closely with Philly Stat 360 to make sure that we are tracking those across the entire city government. I think that's one of the issues, is that folks sometimes look at 311 as being the source or the resolution to many of those issues, and they are not. They are literally a way for us to collect information from people about things that need to be done or questions they have. Many of those questions are, again, things that the city doesn't control or have an interest in. So that, I think, is where we get to some of the challenges.
Quickly, with respect to the departments, the data on departments, can you give a few specific examples of how we've used that data to change staffing or budget needs? And then can you answer the other questions around the service detractor metric?
Councilmember, I can give one example from my experience here over the past multiple years. When I arrived, we had exactly the problem, when I arrived to the fire department, exactly the problem that Councilmember Gilmore-Richardson was talking about with the closing tickets and the question about closing tickets. We had all of these open smoke alarm tickets, and we didn't, 311 tickets, and there was no technical connection. The fire department was keeping a list and 311 was keeping a list. The lists didn't match. There was no crosswalk between the lists. We didn't know if a closed ticket, exactly to the earlier conversation, meant that a smoke alarm had been installed, or if it had just been that minute was transferred to the fire department. Okay. These are very complicated systems, so I think we're in a much better place on that. One of the evidences of that was the investment that was made in smoke alarms. And of course, Mayor Parker made the first general fund investment in that period of time in smoke alarms last year, because we found, when you come in, you say, all right, well, there are no open tickets. And that doesn't mean there wasn't a need. There was absolutely a need. We heard that from people. We got new requests. So that was an area where it fed right back into the funding and the resourcing piece, so we could answer those requests. I think, Net Promoter Scores, look, our folks in 311 are incredibly dedicated. And I mean, I got to be honest, this is another area, I think all of you have alluded to this. We need folks to help us help you. They take a lot of heat and a lot of, frankly, venom from folks sometimes who are calling and asking about, where do I get a birth certificate? Or, well, not so much birth certificate, that's not a great example, but, my power is out, can you fix it? Or my don't have cable. Can you fix it? And why can't you fix it? You know, people are used to calling and getting, if they call one of the utility providers, the infrastructure providers, they get a time and an appointment, and that can be a frustrating experience too. And the 311 operators can't do that. So that, I think, might be some of the source of those challenges. And then part of it, I think, is using it, which is why we have additional dollars to update the app.
So you're saying that the main source of that, 43% dissatisfaction is that people are calling to ask about services that the city does not provide? And then can you just, as a follow-up, how are you ascertaining that?
No, Councilman, I don't know. We don't have, again, those people we don't have, when folks do their Net Promoter Scores, we don't have insight into who those people are or a way to understand why they're rating the way they are. I think it's a combination of, they couldn't fix my problem. I also think sometimes it's a combination of, this is, again, that hole in the street that I talked about, that is something that at the end of the process, the City of Philadelphia, our streets department can fix. Between the time that is created, sometimes by an infrastructure provider that we don't control, and us repaving that street, there are entities that 311 doesn't even have insight into their workflows, like, and again, this is just a reality of the infrastructure, PICO, PGW, PWD, where we do have insight and control over those entities, that we are doing a lot of work to make sure that those efforts are joined up. At the end of the day, 311, they really are an intake and a notification mechanism to other entities. They can't resolve problems themselves.
I understand, and I appreciate our hardworking staff. But given that the number is quite high, do you think that it bears, do you think we should be adding something to understand why people are dissatisfied so that we can address their issue? Even as an intake mechanism, I would imagine that we want people to be satisfied with the intake, right?
Council member, I think that we are taking them at their word. So we are putting a lot of time and attention, and we appreciate council's attention to this. We're taking folks at their word that they're not happy about the experience. We know some of those reasons. We don't know all of the reasons. So that's why we are investing in 311 in the app. We are looking at making that an around-the-clock operation in some form or fashion. We're looking at the compensation for the dedicated folks that answer that phone and take a lot of that heat. So I think that's a great idea, understanding what that 43% is about. For right now, we're taking folks at their word, and we're doing a lot of things to ensure that when a 311 issue comes in that we do have control over, that we're fixing it.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, and thank you again. I neglected to start with my thank yous, and no one reminded me. For the Managing Director's Office, Crystal Yates-Gale, Deputy Managing Director for Health and Human Services, your work on the nonprofit task force was commendable and appreciated. Mike Carroll, Deputy Managing Director for Transportation and Infrastructure. My team says you're always responsive and knowledgeable. Thank you to the Office of Emergency Management and the entire team, obviously for the plane crash that happened in Councilmember Driscoll's district, the Super Bowl parade that we all enjoyed, and all of the weather emergencies. I'm adding the Office of Special Events and Giselle Jones, CLIP, because we love Tom Conway, and ACCT, Sarah Barnett. She's always responsive for our constituent cases and cares about helping animals, and that's from my staff. And then 311, Lori Roberts. She recently retired from 311, but she was great. And we will certainly miss working with her. And Beth in my office, my constituent services director, says that she will miss Lori tremendously. And I also wanted to mention the Office of Arts and Culture as well, so I had to get that on the record. I'll go back to, very quickly, Section 43 of the detail. If we could go to page 24, in light of the announcement that you made this morning. I'd already tabbed this, Managing Director Teal, but if we could get an updated budget detail based on the ongoing conversations with SEPTA, if we can get an updated page 24, that would be helpful. Not today, but just as you all continue the process for page 24. And then I wanted to notate for the record that I did read page 22 relative to the community wellness and recovery centers. And I'll come back to that at another time. And then finally, for section 43 on page 14, if you go to line number 15, 16, 17, and 18, transportation policy analyst, Vision Zero design and project coordinator, Vision Zero program manager, and deputy managing director for Otis. If you could just talk about those four positions in particular and what the goals are for FY26. So I'll repeat it, is section 43, page 14, transportation policy analyst, Vision Zero design and project coordinator, Vision Zero program manager, and deputy managing director for Otis.
Council member, Council President, Vision Zero is our comprehensive effort to ensure we have safe streets for everyone, all modes of transportation. It was Mayor Parker's fourth executive order, one of her earliest executive orders. So we are heavily committed to Vision Zero. You heard Mike Carroll talking about some of the efforts, and I'll invite him up. These are essentially the folks who operate that program with all of our partners, again, some of whom the Council President mentioned.
Right, and just if you could state for the record, if you all are budgeting for a Vision Zero design and project coordinator for this year.
The other thing, while Mike's sitting down, I want to mention the Vision Zero work. That we have a sort of a coordination component that is in Otis, and it's there for a reason, because that is in the managing director's office. It's a high-level office. It's right there because the Vision Zero work includes city agencies and other partners all across government, outside of government. So that is why it is there. And the investments in Vision Zero are not solely located in Otis and in the Vision Zero program either. There are things that the police department's doing. There are things that other partners, the school district, is doing that contributes to Vision Zero. And I'll let Mike talk specifically about those positions.
Good morning, Councilmember. I may have missed the question.
Sure, I'll repeat. From section 43 of the detail, page 14, I was looking at the positions, particularly under Otis, and I'm just mentioning the last four. These are lines 15, 16, 17, and 18.
Yeah.
Transportation policy analyst, Vision Zero design and project coordinator, which is the position I have the question about, and then Vision Zero program manager and deputy managing director for Otis. I don't have a question about 15, 17, and 18. The question is about line number 16, Vision Zero design and project coordinator. Are you all keeping that position for FY26, or is that moving or coming from another department?
Yeah, we're in the process of hiring for that position, so we're not taking that from a different department. We're bringing somebody on to do that work.
Okay, and then, so you all are you budgeting for that position for FY26 though?
Yes.
So you don't have a copy of the detail in front of you?
I do.
But so you can see what I'm looking at here? Because what I see is FY24 actual 1, and the increment run for PPE 11/24/24 and then fiscal 26 budgeted position, it's nothing there.
I'll take that question, if that's okay. A part of what you're seeing is also sometimes a slight shift in the working titles. So the position and the work will stay there, but it might just be a shift in the working titles and who is actually responsible for that work. So you might see under the increment run where there's one position filled, and I can't speak to the details because I'm not sure exactly who this person is, and because I don't have that detail in front of me. But sometimes what you see is that that position existed in November, and it might be slightly retooled for the future. So you'll see that there's other positions that are budgeted in FY26. So that's where that hiring, and it might be a shift in the working title or a shift in the duties. So it's there, it just might be slightly different.
Right, but for the record, you all know what I'm saying
Yes.
as far as trying to track where it is, because just for everyone's clarity, it does not reflect here to say, while it's not listed for FY '26, where it is listed.
So-
That's why I was asking, yeah.
I apologize. I think that, so I just did get additional information from our team, and this position is actually grant funded in the future.
So-
That's
That-
where
so
it's-
that's the
I apologize.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So this spreadsheet, or this page that you're looking right here, this is this is general funds. And so that position is grant funded, so it would appear in a different part of the budget. So that's why you don't see that one position in FY '26, because it's going to be shifted to, is in the grant funds.
So it's currently in general fund and it'll shift to grants fund?
Yes.
Okay, because normally when that happens, it's the other way around recently, which is why I'd asked for the information around our Class 100 and how many positions we're shifting from grants revenue to the general fund. It's just in this instance, it's happening in the other direction, correct? Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Majority Leader Richardson. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity. Then after Jim Harity is Councilmember O'Rourke, and then Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you again for being here. My questions are around rebuild. So just to lead in, I want to just put some numbers out there. So the total rebuild funding is $574 million, $300 million from bonds, $100 million from the William Penn Foundation, $105 million from the capital, 62 million in other grants, and then 7 million from the operating funds. So far, we've spent about half of that, a little more than half. Total expenditures to date is 255 million. 145 million of which came from the bonds, 21 million from the WPF, 75 million from capital, 13 million from other grants, and 1 million from operating. Of course, not all the projects are finished or have even begun construction. And as an example, the Francis Myers Rec Center increased from 10.18 million to 26.56 million. I imagine that's because of the increases in products availability, and I'm sure that's going to get even worse as these tariffs kick in. So what I'm trying to get at here with all those numbers being said is, I was kind of under the impression that rebuild was supposed to be at least partially funded through the soda tax. That was part of the original soda tax, I guess, pitch thing. And I don't see any of that funding here. So have any soda tax funds been used for rebuild in the last 2 years? Would be the question I'd like to know for starters.
Councilmember, I think we'll have to get back to you with our colleagues from Finance and Budget to give you an answer to that question, specifically to the soda tax.
Okay.
We're sort of
Excuse me, point of information. Ask the question again.
Okay,
Sorry.
so the question is, have any soda tax funds been used for rebuild in the past 2 years? The rebuild money is here. We know that the total number is 574 million, and we know that we've already spent 255 million. Gave one example of increases. That was part of it. The first part of the question is, though, has any money from the soda tax, beverage tax, been used in the past 2 years to pay for rebuild? And then the other part of the question is, what are we doing about the overruns that are going to occur? Because I don't think this 255 million number is going to be real at the end of the day.
And for additional clarity, Sabrina, could you also go into how much of the beverage tax money has gone toward paying down a debt service?
Yep, so I'll have to follow up with those numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but just to clarify, so what we always said around the Sabrina Maynard, Budget Director, what we always said around the beverage tax, and this is what we did, is the beverage tax funding helped to pay for the debt service on the borrowings for rebuild.
Right.
So we can get you that breakout of
Yeah,
how
that's
that breaks out
kind of
over
what
time.
I was getting at.
Yep.
So basically, the only thing, and I'll be honest with you, I believe the numbers are going to show that no soda tax money has been even used to, or let's rephrase that. There will be no soda tax money going towards it this year because I don't believe we've made enough money in the soda tax to even pay for childcare, let alone to pay debt service. I believe the number last year was 70 million. We took in for a thing, and childcare is 67 million. So that left 3 million. So debt service could be paid out of that for some of it. But this year, the estimates, so it's not a total, but estimates are saying somewhere around 67, maybe 68 million. That's barely enough to pay for the child care. So how are we paying for this?
Sorry, go ahead. Sure. So we'll provide the breakout of how the beverage tax money has been used over time. And we said all along that, so it's used to cover a couple of different programs. So one is the borrowings for, the debt service on the borrowings for rebuild, also the pre-K program, and then community schools. And so we have a multi-year budget showing how that's been used over time, which we can provide. And we always said that the cost of those programs over time would exceed how much would be brought in by the beverage tax. And so we can provide that breakout to you. Yep.
Yeah, that's, I mean, in my thing, it's correct. It's steadily dropping every year. Like I said, this year, the estimate is that we'll barely make enough to pay for the child care alone. So that's where I'm going. If you could just give me some numbers around that stuff, I'd be happy. Just trying to come up with real stuff here, because again, if we go to the second part of it, and what are we planning for overruns and stuff like that, because I believe this 255 million is going to really go up in the next couple months between costs with the tariffs coming in. I mean, everything we use is coming from out, steel, this, that, so.
Council Member, Council President, I think, again, it is a very dynamic market. The tariff situation changes daily, hourly, and we are tracking that, as you heard Aparna say earlier. Sometimes we can't know for sure until a project is in the really post-design phase, and we start to get into the area where we're ordering supplies and looking at supply chains. Aparna, anything else you want to say to that?
Councilmember, I just wanted to add that the 255 million is actual expenditures in the past, and then to respond to your question about changes in pricing from the initial project estimate.
What I'm saying, the 255, I understand that was what we already paid out, but there's another 200 and whatever left in there. That number is going to grow. It's roughly less than half of the 574 that's left. So it's still over 200 and something million dollars. But I believe that number is going to increase drastically. So do we have a plan for when that does happen? Will that cut some of these things we're trying to do? Because we will not have the money.
So the pricing is based on scope. We're careful to make sure that we align the scope with the cost so that we don't increase our available budgets. So in certain cases, early on, scope had to be modified. You can get into a project and realize there's additional needs for, especially with our infrastructure.
That's why I gave the example of the Myers Rec.
Can I get a point of information? Because Myers Recreation Center is in the 2nd Councilmanic District. And I don't think it had anything to do with the tariffs or the increase in cost of production. It was based upon us working in partnership with the community, and the community is saying, we want more, we want more, we want more, and the budget actually just grew. So it wasn't even based upon, even when COVID happened and some construction costs started to skyrocket, the real issue is that because this was a collaborative process and we let the community have a seat at the table, the community would say, well, we want to have now turf field, right? And that may not have been a part of the original scope, and so that turf field, as a part of that conversation, added to the cost.
Yeah, and that's all ticket work, so T&M, I'm a construction worker, so that's, we charge a surplus for that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to state, I just wanted to clarify, at least when it comes to, that's in my district.
Yeah,
So I wanted to add clarity on that one.
I just gave that because it
as
had
an example.
an increase, but what I'm getting at is that's without even the tariffs. It went up just because of community input.
Yeah, okay,
I
yeah,
believe
community
that
input, I'm
between
with you on that.
community input and tariffs, we're going to
Okay.
have
Just
some-
want to clarify
some
that one.
issues. Yeah, and I apologize.
Partner, could you respond to the member, please?
Just to reiterate, I think we would likely ensure that we are aligning scopes with available budgets as we move forward in the process. And we're always very clear with, when we go to communities to present projects, to clarify what budget is allocated for each site so that expectations are met.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if we're going to have to go to some of these people we already promised and told that we were going to be doing work and tell them that it's either delayed because of other issues beyond our control, is what I'm saying. Because when these
Member,
things
could you
start to
speak in
happen-
the mic?
I'm sorry,
for
when
the
these things
recording?
start to happen, our offices are the ones that are going to get the call. You know what I mean? They're going to start saying, oh, what happened? You told me that they were going to start this, and now they just told us that it's on hold. You know what I'm saying? And I think we need to be prepared for that, because it's not a question of if it happens, it's a question of when it happens and how fast it happens.
Yes, and we are always very careful to include just council members in those conversations, the community conversations.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Member Harity, and thank you for your line of questioning around this very, very important project. Member O'Rourke, Member Brooks, then Member Phillips, Young, Landau, Thomas, and then it's a wrap. We don't know, hard stop at 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Circling back to the Wellness Village. From our understanding, it currently offers step-down beds, meaning you have to receive intensive treatment before being cleared to go to the village. But what is the city's current intensive bed capacity? If it's not being scaled up at the same time, the Wellness Village slots probably will never reach capacity. So what's the current status?
Council Member, Council President, appreciate that. So just the nomenclature for this is very specific with the regulatory scheme, et cetera. So what we are doing at Riverview, those are recovery beds. And you're exactly right. That's the term of art. Those are recovery beds. You're exactly right. Those beds, that's where the gap is right now in the ecosystem. There are beds available for treatment. There are beds available right now in the ecosystem for anybody who wants to say, who's ready to come in and get treatment. And that ecosystem, this is what you see up there, that kind of middle ecosystem. Those are private sector, not-for-profit, for-profit providers. That's the 30, 60, 90-day treatment. That market is somewhat elastic and responsive to demand, so we are constantly talking with providers and bringing new beds. Providers are bringing new beds online when the demand changes. We are seeing that market operate, which is what we told you we anticipated after talking with all the providers and everybody in this ecosystem. So yes, that is the treatment, that capacity is there. This is a rough number, but it's order of magnitude, it's around 3,000, beds. That's not a direct number. We can get you back the direct number. It changes daily with the market. And before we added the 336 beds, recovery beds at Riverview, that increased the recovery bed capacity in the entire ecosystem in the city by 64%. So now we're up to almost, about a little bit less than 1,000 beds. Again, just to make, for order of magnitude comparison, we have about 3,000 treatment beds in the ecosystem, and now we have almost 1,000 recovery beds, which is why that's still the gap. That's why we need to continue to move forward. We need those numbers to match so that people who come out of treatment have a place to go. If they don't have a place to go that is in this comprehensive wellness ecosystem, this long-term care treatment and housing, we know where they go. And that is not good for them. It's not good for our communities. And so that is really what we're trying to build out. That's the scale to which we are trying to build this, while we hope that the market will eventually work to provide more recovery beds on its own.
Thank you, Director. I will say, I heard the buzzer. I'll shift to this one. I wanted to ask this question. Thank you for sharing with the council the proposed plan for Medicaid reimbursement for services provided at the village. I want to clarify that the administration stated in their letter to the council that primary care and substance use disorder treatment are currently reimbursable. Has the city received any Medicaid reimbursement for services provided at the Wellness Village? And if so, how much have we actually received so far?
Council member, that reimbursement is done, the requests are done by the providers, and that the money goes back to the provider. So the city's not directly in that loop. So that helps offset the provider's costs. And at the same time, I think with caveats, that is the situation today. That we are working with the state. We have been working and will continue to work at the federal level to ensure that Medicaid funding, well, to help get Medicaid funding unlocked for types of treatment and services where it might not currently be able to be used. That's part of shifting this to more of a market mechanism. And that was a complicated, maybe complex space before, that now is even more complex as we see, again, just see changes happening and try to anticipate what may or may not happen at the federal level.
The president said hard stop, so I'll let it rock. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Member O'Roy. The chair recognizes Councilmember Brooks, then Councilmember Phillips, and Councilmember Young. Just please be direct with your question as well as your response.
Thank you. So I'm in the same, this was not planned, but almost similar question. So, you know, I visit the Riverview facility. It's a beautiful space, and I want to commend you on the work done in making the buildings livable. However, I was saddened to learn of the relatively low number of people living in these big, beautiful spaces. And I also understand there's some degree of selection happening, that some of the hardest medical cases are not being sent to Riverview. So does the administration have plans to ease the requirements on living in Riverview to accommodate more people in harder medical cases? And I'm also thinking that relapse is a part of recovery, but we are hearing that people who suffer relapse while at Riverview face immediate discharge. And I was wondering, how many people have you discharged from Riverview for using substance, and what happens next with those folks? Because once they've been in placement for 90 days, they're no longer considered homeless. So do they go back into the system? To your point, you just said that, you know, what do we do with folks in the next stage? So by the time they hit Riverview, from my understanding when we did the tour, after 90, they're coming there after their 90 days. So they're not considered homeless anywhere because they had some place to stay. So they get to Riverview and relapse. Then what?
Councilmember, Council President, I think it's important to say these are all difficult cases from a physical, clinical, medical health standpoint, behavioral health, substance use treatment. These are all difficult cases. And it is important for the safety of the folks who are there, all of the residents, that there are standards for behavior that are maintained. And standards, again, we are licensed. I mean, these are licensed beds. These are licensed by the state. Ergo, there are certain standards that have to be upheld to maintain that licensing for recovery beds. If somebody, I'll use the term relapse. If somebody relapses, then that's not the care that they need anymore. So that's not a recovery bed case anymore. That is, we hope that folks go back into treatment. The reality is we can't hold people against their will, our residents there. So if our residents make those decisions and make those choices, then our goal is to, as you saw, to create a facility that has the dignity and has all of the services needed, skilled, credible providers who can make it so you don't want to leave and you can stay on that journey. It's not just about what folks want. I mean, this is difficult for individuals. So if they're not able to meet those standards, then we hope they go back into treatment somewhere. The reality is we don't have control over them at that point. The really complex.
Do we have a number of folks that decided to elope or discharge, and do we track those folks? Because the reality, they're going back to where they came from and back into the system again. So are we tracking this? Because I'm thinking, based on the numbers, whether it's 30 or 50 people that have been at the Wellness Village, if 5 of them, that's already a 10% rate. So are we tracking the folks to kind of figure out this cycle that we know is a cycle? Recovery is a lifelong thing. So if someone relapses and we send them back to the street, then what? It's not like hands off. We're still going to end up back in our system some way or form. And the ask is, how many people have done something similar to that, and are we tracking?
Councilmember, we are tracking those numbers, and we can get you those numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Phillips, Young, Landau, Thomas.
Thank you,
Council.
Council
Hard
President.
stop at 1, so please be direct with your question and direct with your response, please.
Thank you, Council President. The Juvenile Justice Center has been operating under a provisional license following a widely publicized incident where a fight broke out during a boxing match. Can you, the NBO's office, provide an update on the status of the provisional license and detail what oversight mechanisms have been put in place since the incident, and what corrective actions have been implemented, and how the administration will be ensuring the safety, well-being, and programming, and proper programming for youth housed at the facility?
Councilmember, we will certainly follow up with our colleagues who are responsible for those programs and get you that update.
Okay, thank you. And I just have an additional question. Vision Zero is continuing to promote the idea of traffic calming measures, as well as another host of things. In this upcoming Vision Zero plan, is there anything else that can be less of a financial deep cost for the city to take on that the Vision Zero team is looking to do to really help halt issues when it comes to speeding and so forth in our city?
Councilmember, Council President, the short answer is yes, and we'll have Mike Carroll come up and give you some of the details, subject to the council members' timelines. And again, I think this reinforces the point that many Vision Zero related activities are happening across departments and even in other related entities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. So the answer is yes, and this also gives me an opportunity to respond to Council President's comment at the end of the first set of questions, that one of the things that we're doing is trying to get information out to people in terms of public education. So we do put information on the backs of buses, at bus stops. It's part of a campaign. The education also includes work with schools, which we've spoken with Councilmember Thomas about in the past, trying to build curriculum within the schools to educate children about, traffic safety, but also school communities about traffic safety. So there are a number of things that we are doing which are lower cost, but we think will be effective in the long run as we start to get people aware and change behavior.
Thank you. That's awesome if we can work with all the council members on those initiatives, especially if you're going into schools in certain areas. Maybe we can help with the advertisement for that, and also ideas of where some of your public-facing awareness campaigns can be most helpful at. All right, thank you, Michael, and thank you, NDO's office.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Young, then Landau, then Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just looking at the brief information that was sent over, it talks about the public restrooms. Can you elaborate a little bit more as we prepare for 2026 and things like that? I just happened to be like a fast food restaurant, and like some tourists were looking for a restroom and they couldn't use it, right? So they can't go into our hotels to use the restroom. So can you elaborate on how we're going to upgrade these facilities for the future?
Councilmember, I think Council President, the sort of steady state daily public restroom activity, that's something that Deputy Managing Director Yates Gale can talk about, and our Public Health Commissioner. With respect to 2026, please rest assured when you see dollars for 2026 for the safe, clean, green aspects of 2026, adequate and sufficient restroom facilities are at the top of that list everywhere that we expect concentrations of people, which frankly for 2026 is everywhere. So that is that'll be a large component of the dollars that we spend, the Class 200 dollars we spend to ensure we are ready for that influx of people in 2026. That again, we would characterize that as temporary capacity while we continue to build out the Philly Flush program with effective products for kind of our steady state daily need.
Okay, well, can someone, outside of the 2026, can someone talk to us about what that looks like? It was in, I guess, this document here that was submitted to us. It was a line in here talking about the upgrades to those public, restrooms. So is it a goal to increase those public restrooms? And can someone, what's the number that you guys are looking for? Because you're asking for money for that, right? So we just looking to see what that is.
Councilmember, the short answer is yes, that is a goal. And here's Deputy Manager Director Yates Gale again to talk about public toilets.
Councilmember, good afternoon. Crystal Yates Gale, MDO. I think Managing Director just answered. It started, the Philly Flush model started as a pilot, and we would love to expand and continue them. Right now, we have 3. We're working on an additional one in West Philadelphia. The next one will be in South Philadelphia. They move slowly because they're hard plumbed into the system, and we also have to do community engagement. It's my understanding that when we first started to do the models, that they weren't well received because it was thought that they would attract unhoused people. So we have to do the community engagement so that we expand them across the city. They're well received. There's one right outside of the.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's a positive thing for our city.
Thank you.
One more question. In the budget, I noticed that there are no strategic goals or performance measures for the legal service agencies, and I just want to know what's the rationale and thinking behind that when we're providing them with millions of dollars and they don't have to meet goals, anything like that.
Now, he just came in and had the same observation. This was addressed early on, but
Okay, thank you.
Address it for the record, though, sir.
I appreciate that, Council President, Council Member. Yeah, I think that's really, it's a display issue because we don't directly provide those services, and it's something that we can fix. So we will have, with respect to the SCCA, Support Center for Child Advocates, will have strategic goals by the end of this week to you, including FY25 metrics and 26 goals from them. And again, we'll take that as feedback across the display for the entire budget.
I respect you, see, for not even trying to defend that and making a whole bunch of excuses. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Chair recognizes Councilman Rue Landau, and then wrapping us up would be Majority Whip Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have heard there's supposed to be a triage nurse on site at Wellness Court. Is the salary, is that true? And is the salary covered in this budget?
Councilmember, I think we'll have to talk with our colleagues in OPS and get you that answer.
Okay, thank you. And what funding will be allocated for Riverview for medication-assisted treatment like Suboxone and Methadone? Will they be offered?
Council President, Riverview is not a treatment location. Those folks are in recovery. Ergo, that is not an anticipated service that we're providing there at Riverview, and if that's your question.
Okay. Then I want to follow up on some of the questions that my colleague, Councilmember Brooks, was asking, or O'Rourke, I believe. You were saying that there are 3,000 treatment beds right now. I asked yesterday.
Roughly, Councilmember, roughly. Yeah.
That's okay. At some point, we would love to see the list of which entities are running those beds. And I believe you said that there are currently 336 recovery beds at Riverview, trying to get up to 1,000 and hopefully 3,000 at some point, right? To match, you said you wanted to have the same amount of recovery beds as you have for treatment beds.
Councilmember, that's throughout the entire ecosystem, not just Riverview. We couldn't fit that many beds at Riverview. So Riverview is our city's attempt to address the market gap that exists today and the hope that eventually the market will change. I also want to make sure I'm clear. We do have residents at Riverview, and again, we have to be somewhat cautious. The folks at Riverview who are receiving treatments of various kinds, we call folks residents generally. There are folks who are patients, so we need to be cautious about, for privacy reasons, what we disclose about the levels of treatment that they are getting. So if there are people who are in the longer phase of MAT, that could be a service that is being provided, again, and as part of that tail of the longer recovery process. As far as the locations and the folks, again, the little circles in that ecosystem, we have been very deliberate. I think we talked about this last year. We are not disclosing a list of those providers and facilities for the privacy of the patients who are there, and also to protect those facilities. We view them as we do domestic violence shelters and others that, again, it's important that we allow people to have unfettered access to those, and we don't want to chill anybody from who's already taking a leap to raise their hand and say, I want to get help, to have them go to that somewhere in that ecosystem.
Let me back up and ask one last question that I believe to be what we were initially looking at for the wellness centers. Why are we not providing the treatment services and the treatment beds at Riverview so that people, if we are trying to be holistic and have the care from start to finish, folks can check themselves out of the treatment centers. They don't have a place to go, and if we really do want to wrap our arms around them and give them all the services they need, we should have treatment there and then the recovery beds.
Councilmember, Council President, that is a model, that is an idea. Certainly, that would be a lot more expensive. I think the short answer is right now, there is an active, responsive market to provide the treatment beds. We don't want to compete with the private sector and the not-for-profits that are already doing that work. And right now, they appear that system can expand to meet the current anticipated demand. Where the gap is recovery.
Why can't they provide the treatment at the recovery center, though? We have other entities that are providing services at Riverview. Why can't we have the nonprofits providing the treatment services for the treatment beds at Riverview so that they can have a holistic wraparound services?
Councilmember, we're not licensed to do that at Riverview now. The licensing process, as you can imagine, for that type of care is much more intensive and it's more expensive. And right now, again, there's an active market for this entire ecosystem to provide treatment. It is recovery beds that are the gap. That's why we can't move people through the process. That's why we've sort of been stuck at 30, 60, 90, and you're out. So we are really focusing our limited and precious city resources on where the gap in the market exists today. In the future, it's hard to know. This is a very dynamic space. This is healthcare, so we all understand how complex, expensive, and challenging it is. That could change. So we are also making sure that throughout the ecosystem, we are flexible enough to adapt to changing market conditions, changing conditions in the patient and resident populations.
Appreciate that flexibility so much and appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you, Member Landau. And last but certainly not least, Majority Whip Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon to the admin. I just wanted to just get a couple things on the record before we close out. The first thing is listening to some of the remarks around Parks and Recs. I definitely would love to have a meeting with the commissioner. Some new information was presented. I know the hearing is next week, but sometimes 3 to 5 minutes is not enough time to really do a deep dive, and we know the summer is right around the corner. So, Council President, I appreciate your questioning specifically around summer preparedness and getting young people ready for programs and different initiatives. So that definitely would be appreciated. We communicated some concerns as it relates specifically to fleet. We know fleet that will be coming next week, but I want to be clear, this is not about the people who work in fleet, right? We've allocated a lot of money to the fleet department through the last couple transfers, as well as looking at, mid-year transfers, as well as looking at the proposed budget for this year. And we are also looking in general to give a huge pot of money to the managing director's office as a whole. With so many moving parts from the managing director's office, it looked like that you have moved over $100 million worth of programming and personnel outside of the MDO. So is the balloon in requesting that we're seeing, I'm saying since you guys have taken over, we've seen some shift in position. So with less responsibility, is the balloon in request that we're seeing for MDO, and again, we see it in multiple departments, but is it specifically around the wellness center, or is there another reason why we see such a large request from MDO with responsibilities being dispersed other places?
Councilmember, Council President, Councilmember, I really appreciate that question. It's been something I've been wanting to say. The Managing Director's office it's not a department. To your point, we directly oversee around 20 departments, many more programs, and even with our restructuring in this administration, the Managing Director's office still enables and funds other agencies across city government, as well as not-for-profit partners, many of whom we've talked about. So certainly, I don't think our responsibility has decreased. where some of these programs land and they are displayed has changed. And I think the really short answer to your question is wellness, developing this wellness ecosystem, continuing to cultivate that and build it out. That is a lot of the increase that you see in our budget on paper, even as we move things around within the administration. So we still have a role in equities, and Fleet's a great example of that, across all of city government. So that,
So are we looking at an increase in personnel? Are we looking at an increase in contracting? Do you feel like it's being evenly dispersed? I mean, I think that the ask amount is pretty significant considering how money is being dispersed across other departments. So I'm wondering, is it discretionary spending? What are we looking at?
Councilmember, Council President, I think we're making these changes based on priorities, and that mantra, safer, cleaner, greener, with access to economic opportunity for all. Also, 2026 is coming, and many of the investments, again, as you've talked about, many of those investments for us to have the things that we need, from vehicles to porta potties and everything in between for 2026, we certainly have been planning. We need to be procuring a lot of those things now because other cities are also in queue for that. There are a limited number of the nice bathroom trailers that we can get. So I think we have a number of things coming that obviously are sort of big one-time-ish events.
So we're concerned about the PUSH program, similar to Councilmember Young. We have a hearing next week where we're going to do a deep dive into 2026 stuff. And we recognize the importance of being prepared. Absolutely, no question about that. I think what we're offering is just a little pushback on how we're spending the money, not just in 2026, but in general. If you look at, Fleet, for example, right? The amount of revenue that we're spending there is, let's just do a deeper dive another time. I heard the bell. I want to respect the hour. I will submit the rest of my questions in writing. The one thing I will ask as we close out, because I do want to have a deeper dive in 2026, I would invite the Managing Director's Office to be a part of that panel next week. We already have commitments from Michael Newman as well as Giselle, and we're excited to talk about them and the great roles that they've done. As we close out, though, one of my big priorities has been keep it local. And so in the midst of me asking in the line of questioning around revenue and money, and the new money that's coming in, when we look at the contracts that goes directly out of the Managing Director's office, most of the professional contracts go to businesses that are outside of the city of Philadelphia. So I'm wondering, what can we do to have more of a concentrated effort and a focus to specifically have more professional contracts that's coming out of the admin as well as specifically the Managing Director's office be allocated to Philadelphia-based businesses?
Councilmember, Council President, we spend a lot of time on that. We share your same concern. One of the things we did at Riverview at the Wellness Center was really do a lot to mobilize local vendors. That is an ongoing conversation with our CAO and our new Procurement Commissioner. And of course, we have Commerce and a lot of other efforts around developing those vendor ecosystems. Fleet, and I know they have their own hearing. I will simply say we've talked a lot about the uncertainty around pricing going forward. Vehicle costs have increased substantially over the past several years. There are a number of reasons for that. Venture capital entry into the markets for specialized vehicles, supply and demand. I know that Commissioner Rosati and others will talk about that in detail with you during their hearing.
Yeah, we've asked Rob DeBoe for a written explanation because, again, we understand that the cost of doing business has gone up, but we need to make sure that we do our due diligence when it's time for us to take these votes. So, Council President, I'll submit the rest of my questions in writing. I look forward especially to not just this afternoon, but our budget hearings next week. We have some important departments, and I will hope to get a meeting with both Fleet and Parks and Recs prior to our budget meetings next week, because I clearly have a lot of questions, and hopefully those questions could get answered outside of just the 3 to 5 minutes that we have to talk on this platform here today. Thank you, Council President, and thank you to the admin for being here today and to testify and answer important questions.
This hearing will be at ease until 2 p.m. sharp.